Here, let's open.
Yeah.
You did that, right?
You really did.
Okay, you can get it.
All right, everyone. Welcome to the January 8th, 2026 BAR small meeting. My name is Lindsay James Sandberg. I'll be your chairwoman this evening. Fellow board members present today are Daryl Hobb, Becky Fenno, Bill Turner, and Fillmore Wilson. City staff present today are Frankie Pinto, BARS administrator, and Travis Galley, senior preservation planner. The order of tonight's meeting will be as follows. For each application, we'll hear an introduction overview of the project from city staff for the benefit of the board and public. This will be followed by the applicant's presentation. The applicant will have a 10-minute period of time to present the project. If anyone speaking on behalf of the applicant, and this would be owners, designers, architects, consultants, should speak during the applicant presentation versus during public comment. And please, everyone speaking, approach the podium and state your name first and last for the record. This will be followed by a public comment. Any written public comment that was timely submitted on the city's website has been provided to the board in advance of the meeting for review. If you have anyone in the audience speaking as a member of the public, please raise your hand. I'll recognize you. Approach the podium, state your name first and last for the record, and your address if you're a nearby neighbor. Public comment will be followed by city staff comments and recommendations. And once we've heard from city staff, the applicant will have a 5-minute period of time to respond to or clarify anything raised in the public comment or the city staff comments and recommendations. After that, the applicant's presentation will be closed and we'll move into board discussion and a vote on each item. Results will be posted online at the city's website, and the following items have been withdrawn or deferred. Agenda item 3, 188 Grove Street, and agenda item 14, 35 Broad Street. Please remember to turn off your cell phones, and also please remember to review this board is architectural only. So anything related to zoning, livability, stormwater is not from the purview of this board and should not be used here. Okay. Agenda item A1 is review of the minutes from the December 11th, 2025 meeting. I make a motion to approve with the edits I circulated to the board this afternoon. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Fillmore. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hearing none opposed, the motion passes unanimously. Agenda item B1 is 1010 Ashley Avenue. Frankie, if you'll give us an introduction overview of the project, please.
Yes, ma'am. 1010 Ashley is in Wagner Terrace, which is Council District 6. They are a category 4 in the architecture inventory circa 1938 and in the historic materials demolition district. They're requesting approval for a partial demolition, including portions of the rear roof. And per the BZA motion of 5/2025, a board architecture review approval is required for exterior alterations. So they are also requesting conceptual approval for a new second-story addition. This is the property's location on Ashley. And I'm going to turn it over to the applicant. You have a clicker up there if you pointed at Travis's computer, but if you have trouble, just let us know and help.
Good evening, I'm Abigail Brennan. I'm representing the owner for 1010 Ashley Avenue. We are requesting demolition of the historic roof, 44% of it, and conceptual approval. Okay. Thank you for your time this morning and for your feedback for the last meeting. We went through what was suggested and kind of figured out the best way to squeeze out what we could out of what the client wanted. But to address some of the staff comments to begin, that the area of demolition should be pushed to the rear, below the ridge, and not extend all the way to the eave. So we did push the area of demolition to the rear even beyond the halfway mark of the house. And just something to note that the top of the ridge is too low for dormers. So extending it below the ridge wouldn't be feasible. And then given the bungalow's small footprint and just aligning the structural loads, we just were trying to squeeze what we could out of just adding 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom. And so we took it into consideration, but we couldn't squeeze it enough away from the eaves to make it worth achieving that. And then the request is for more than 50% of the roof. Our previous request included the front porch roof, which was attached to the main roof, but this time we adjusted our design accordingly and removed that portion of the roof from our calculations. So you'll note in other drawings. Proposed demolition on the east elevation does not accurately show the demolition. We've revised this as well, so we'll see that later on. Proposal is not subordinate in height, scale, mass, and overwhelms the original structure. We have pushed the area demolition again towards the rear. And we lowered the bearing height to 6'8", where it was 8 foot before. And so it is subordinate to the first floor, which sits at 8'4" for the ceiling. And we are just maintaining the simple low sloped roof line to match the existing slope with the existing bungalow. So it was commented that we were losing historic character of the house and its context. And the defining characteristics of a bungalow are a front porch, which we are doing no alterations to, a low pitched gable roof, which is preserved, and we're following that same slope for the new addition as well. Our overhang eaves with exposed rafters are maintained, and then symmetrical window placement, often grouped or paired, which we are using as well. And then a compact footprint is consistent. A typical classical bungalow footprint is 1,200 to 1,800 square feet. Our final proposal at the end is a little bit more than 1,600, was well beyond that, but our footprint is shy of 1,100 square feet, so still smaller than what a classic bungalow is. As for the neighborhood context, the property sits mid-block, just south of Mount Pleasant Street. It's at the tail end of Wagner Terrace neighborhood. I will be showing a Sanborn map, which primarily was single-story homes, but today you can see that they are primarily two-story homes. And then our site is surrounded by, like I said, to the north and to the south, two-story homes as well. And so it's just towered in between all of its neighbors. So within its context, what we're proposing isn't too far-fetched. And then precedents that were provided were constructed prior to VAR jurisdiction in this neighborhood. And yes, but at the same time, these examples just show the layers and the historic neighborhood and how construction is just kind of an organic thing over time. And then for a board comment that the house next door, the board did approve due to extenuating circumstances due to the orientation of the ridge. And that was for 1006 Ashley Avenue. And they received BAR approval for a demolition of 56% of their historic roof, which I have a drawing on later on. And their gable roof runs parallel to the street. So it allows them to hide their visual impact of demolition. And I think that roof orientation is key factor in visual impact. A ridge that runs perpendicular to the street, you can't hide what you're demolishing. And also being a small house on a very small lot, it just has its own set of limitations. And we're just trying to do our best to make this house work for the clients and their needs. And again, then the roof is too low for dormers. So once again, with a perpendicular ridge with no natural break to conceal demolition, we just are kindly asking for special consideration for this proposed 1,625 square foot bungalow, which again remains modest to most homes in the Wagner Terrace. So top right is the Sanborn map I was mentioning. You can see it's primarily one single story homes. And just below it is 1010 Ashley Avenue, single story. And then it's neighbored on the top left, it's a 2-story, 2.5 story. And then bottom right, you can see 1006, which was the property that I mentioned that did receive approval for 56% of its historic roof. And then top right, you can see the aerial footage of just showing the 2 stories primarily in the neighborhood and very much on the street in the context of this house. And then for the demo that we're looking to do for the roof, you can see it highlighted in the red on the top left, and then bottom left as well. And then just removing the gable to work for the 2nd story addition, which that was what was revised according to your feedback. And then some precedents, which are very similar, but take away more than 50% of the roof. Again, not in your purview, but showing that it is just part of the neighborhood context. But if you look at the Sanborn maps, pretty identical, and they built out in the back as well, which we're not trying to overwhelm the site like that. other precedents in the neighborhood of more than 50% of the roof. And then again, just showing that it just it might have been and it might not have been in your purview, but it's just part of the historic fabric of the neighborhood, and it can be done well as well. So on the left, you can see the existing site plan, 992 square foot bungalow, 1 story. And then on the right, you can see our bump out, our new construction area on the 2nd floor. It's set back 48 feet from the street. It is 490 square feet on top of that existing footprint. And then we're proposing a new 71 square foot 2-story addition in the back, which is notated in the yellow. And then it shows 1010 Ashley Avenue, and then below it, 1006 Ashley Avenue. So compared to the below precedent, our structure is smaller, our lot is smaller, and we are still at the same point requesting 44% of the historic roof demo. We're not removing the eaves. We think that's a great characteristic quality of the house. And you can see where it's set back from the demolition for 1006 Ashley Avenue. Our demolition is 9 foot setback from that, and then that little bump out, it's 6 foot change from that as well. So it's pretty far setback from the street. And again, only 490 square feet that we're adding to a 992 square foot footprint.
Ms. Brennan, you've got about a minute left.
Okay. So our new elevation is top right. We removed the clear story, so it's not as top heavy as it was. And again, we lowered it to 6'8" ceiling height. We removed the attic, and it's pretty far set back when you look at it from the side elevation. And then the rear and the other side, again, set back. And then this is just showing the street context of what you have 1012 Ashley Avenue in the center, our property 1010, and then 1006 Ashley Avenue. So you can tell that it just fits within what is happening in the neighborhood. And then I have a section of just showing realistically the head height in our existing attic, how dormers are possible. And then some perspective showing that we're tucked back in the back. The details are still of a classic bungalow. And then as well, just showing the rear, which is not from public right away, but it kind of tells the story of what we're trying to accomplish.
Any questions for the applicant?
Can you leave it on sheet A203 when
Oh, sorry, which one?
A203? Or thank you.
Any other questions? Do we have anyone speaking?
Laurel Fay with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The PSC appreciated the opportunity to visit the site this morning and believes that the revised design has improved the proportions and decreased the scope of demolition. We feel that the applicant has addressed our team's and the board's previous concerns. Thank you.
Utility Historic Charleston Foundation. We appreciate visiting the site this morning. We do not believe that the demolition of historic material, including the roof bridge, is appropriate. While we appreciate the height of the proposed addition has been reduced, the massing and overall scale remain out of character with the historic building. Thank you.
Anyone else speaking? Frank, you have to give us any staff comments and recommendations.
Staff observations first. The area of the roof demo has been reduced. Staff would be more comfortable if the area was what you stated it was. I don't think we had found the number when we were reviewing. Staff recommend adding windows on the north elevation. That would be if possible. We weren't sure if there was a building code issue that prevented that. The fenestration on south elevation is much improved and the overall height has been reduced. Previously proposed dormers have been removed. That condition for approval would be reduced roof dormer area. We were asking for less than 50% though, so since that is already there. I guess I'll leave that statement there for now. And additional fenestration be added on that north elevation. Our recommendation is approval of demolition and conceptual with board staff commission and preliminary and final review to be conducted by staff in the front.
Thank you. Ms. Brennan, do you want to respond to or clarify anything related to the public comment or the CES comments?
Okay, yes, we are demolishing only 44%, excuse me. And that is not including the roof over the porch. And then as for the north side, per code, we're not allowed to do it.
Too close to the
because,
property line.
yeah, and I could find the exact, yeah, we're 2'4".
All right, public
We
comment?
assume that was the issue, but if it was not, we were.
Sorry, I mentioned it the last time, so. Yeah.
Forgot.
Okay. All right, public comment and the presentation is now closed. So we'll move into board discussion and a vote.
I do think it's improved a great deal. So the second floor mass fits much better proportionally to what there is on the first floor. I think the biggest improvement was eliminating the clear story from the design, both from a height scale mass and also it just didn't quite seem to fit with what you find in the neighborhood. So I realize that this is square foot wise, it's probably a little more than what we like to see, but it is a very, very small house. If you look at the program for the second floor, it's fairly modest. They're not asking for anything grandiose or anything. So I think I'm fairly comfortable with this.
Daryl?
I'm in agreement with Bill.
I appreciate that the roof removal area has reduced and the height of the second story has come down. Certainly the organization's fenestration on the north side is improved. However, this alteration, in my view, is still an architectural concept that greatly alters the street presence of the historic house and is incongruous with the height scale and mass of the historic house and is for a small bungalow like this is inappropriate for the streetscape. So
I think we struggle with that, really, when you buy a small house, you're buying what you're, buying what you're buying. So it is a dilemma to want to add on to it significantly and change it significantly. So that's,
and I think that, of course, I don't know what all has been investigated. And I know it is a very tight lot, but I think there may be avenues for thinking a little bit more creatively about adding onto this house in ways that might allow to retain some of the a reasonable amount of a very small yard and still have a little space for getting with another bedroom and bath. But that's just a thought. So an afterthought after looking at the property. It might be possible, but I think this architectural concept is just incongruous with the height scale and mass of the small bungalow and in general with the small bungalows in the neighborhood.
I tend to agree with that, except that the neighborhood has, I think, like, there's so much precedent now. Like now there's so much if this were the first, I would probably hold the line on that, but it's hard now because that that precedent seems to have been established.
I don't think we would have approved next door.
What?
Yeah, I don't think we would have approved next door if next door were the first
Yeah.
one. Since
Right.
this used to be all one.
So I
story.
understand that. So next door was sort of a outside
Yeah.
exception because of it. Can't go back and dig out that application. Refresh my memory on it.
Okay.
And I agree that there's a lot of this going on in the neighborhood. I struggle to continue to bad concept, even if it's gotten fairly complex.
I think when you, on the flip, and I agree with, I understand what both of you are saying, and I agree too. I agree with it, that in this context, this one particular lot, with it being next door to the two-story house, and then the house on the opposite side, which is having a second story added to it. It's significantly shorter now than its neighbors, and so, yeah, so I have some struggle with this, but I think Abigail sort of done what I had thought needed to be done.
And sticking with less than 50% of the roof,
Yeah.
I appreciate, even with as small as this house is and as difficult as that probably was, the square footage they wanted.
And I appreciate the argument that there's a lot of this in the neighborhood, and just struggle when you have a small house like this and a small lot, you need to make changes. But we are using precedent that some of which was set before this purview, some of which was probably set, which wasn't the best decision. And so we are simply, I think, continuing to create precedent for not the best approach to adding on to these small bungalows.
I don't think you're wrong, Fillmore. But when I go back to sheet 8203 and I see the precedence of the neighboring house that we approved at 10006, for one. Then we're,
You know, we constantly say that every individual, I mean, it's constantly touted that every submittal is an individual decision, and it doesn't set a precedent. It does set precedent. We're sitting here talking about the fact that we have set precedent.
correct.
Okay, so we are setting precedent.
But yeah, I don't think you're wrong, but I feel hypocritical to not approve it based on what we've been doing.
And I don't think we have to agree, but it does sound like we probably have some to put on a motion.
Yes,
Sarah, would you want to make a motion?
I would make a motion to approve it as submitted with board comments and preliminary and final by staff.
So we need to, so it's approval of demolition and conceptual with staff conditions and preliminary and final review by staff. Was that your motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Since staff condition one has already been
Oh, there are no staff.
done
Oh.
and the other cannot be done because building code.
So it's approval of demolition and conceptual approval. And preliminary and final review by staff.
Correct.
All right, do I have a second to Daryl's motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, Bill. I'll put the motion to a vote. Fillmore,
Nay opposed.
Becky,
No opposed.
Daryl,
Yay.
Bill.
Yay in favor.
The chair votes with the majority and the motion passes 3-2 and 2 against. Thank you. All right, agenda item 2, 932 Rutledge Avenue. Frankie, if you'll give us an introduction overview of the project. One second.
We're talking faster than I did. Okay, 932 Rutledge is in North Central Council District 4. It is a category 4 in the architecture inventory circa 1939 in historic corridor district, requesting approval for partial demolition of exterior elements that are visible from the roadway. This is property location on Rutledge. And I will turn it over to the applicant.
Thank you, Frankie. John Sullivan with SRC Studio, represent the applicant, and thank you guys for meeting us out there this morning. As you guys saw, so this is a small bungalow on Rutledge, and just to remind you guys that residents on Rutledge, BAR will have say so in what we put back there. Requesting, it does say 1939. It might be 1939, or there might be a house there in 1939 that was torn down and added on to. It looks about the size of that front gable that's perpendicular to this Rutledge size, but I can't find any evidence. And then that the T gable on the back was added on. It looks like about the size that was added on, but I can't tell if it was or not. Just like so, that might have been added on to the back. What we're trying to do. Here's some very blurry earlier photos. You can see that the first thing we're trying to demolish is the very poor pre-manufactured canopy along the front that looks like it was added in the 70s. It's lower than the roof. It covers up part of the windows. I don't think there's any controversy that definitely doesn't add anything to the historic fabric. And then besides things like the vinyl side and stuff like that, want to get rid of a portion of the rear that I think is minimally visible on that. We are keeping definitely from the north, if you look at it, because the way it's set back there, you can't see that. And from the south part, we're going to keep a couple of feet of the building to keep the historic corner and give us a little area to do this little addition. This kind of shows kind of thing. So it's very minimally visible at all from the street. And it's actually shielded by that carport, but you can see that whole area right there. That's what we're trying to do. So.
Any questions for the applicant? Thank you. Do we have anyone speaking from the public?
Laurel Fay with the Preservation Society of Charleston. At the site visit this morning, the PSC noticed that there are multiple 3/1 wood windows in the proposed demolition area that are intact and in good condition. We ask that these windows be salvaged and reused on the property rather than removed. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else speaking? Okay, Frankie, if you'll give us any staff comments and recommendations, please.
Staff just had some observations. The rear demolition is very minimal. The front metal roof appears to be a rear addition. And then since this, as John was saying, since this is an historic corridor, the front roof replacement and any rear addition will require BAR review, but could potentially be something that is reviewed by staff. Staff just had a recommendation of approval of demolition with staff observation number 3. Remind everybody.
Thank you, Frankie. Mr. Sullivan, did you want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the public comment?
No.
All right, public comment and the applicant's presentation is now closed. So we'll move into board discussion and a vote.
The rear is pretty much not visible. There's some, I went out there and checked it from Magnolia Street and to the rear. There's a little bit of visibility, but not a great deal. Of course, I don't have any issue with the front metal canopy. Much improvement.
I agree.
I agree. I don't have anything to.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion for approval.
All right, we have a motion for approval of demolition. Wait, you
The
said stuff.
approval is submitted. I just wanted to make it obvious to everyone that anything would come back. John and I have already spoken about it. And
All right, so we have a motion on the floor for approval of demolition as submitted. Do I have a second to Bill's motion?
A second.
Becky, I'll put the motion to vote. Daryl,
Yeah, in favor.
Fillmore,
Yeah, in favor.
Bill,
Yeah, in favor.
Becky.
Yeah, in favor.
The majority of the motion passed unanimously. Agenda item 3, 188 Grove Street has been withdrawn for site visit this morning. Agenda item 4, 23 Buckwood Avenue. Frank, if you give us a introduction overview of the project, please.
23 Brookwood is in Hampton Park Terrace. It's category 4 in the architecture inventory, circa 1920, needs for material demolition. By requesting approval for partial demolition of exterior elements that are visible from the public right of way. This is the property's location on Brookwood. The applicant.
Thank you. I'm Bobby Newman. I'm representing Indian and Andrew Plunkett for 23. Our what we're trying to do here is we have a project for utilizing the deck space that was built back in 2019. They don't utilize it, so we'd like to be able to do is we have plans for a sitting room off the master bedroom, and that would include demoing the existing fascia, the return of the existing handrail. There's a side door that goes off the bedroom, also a screen door. And we're trying to just utilize this space because the owner does not use it. So we submitted a plan. But we have to go through what's the old way of doing this, the way y'all do the submittals. We're just asking for removal of these items in order to move forward with the plan. Let me see if I can just move this. A little bit of a rookie with this stuff here. As you'll see that this is on the right-hand side of the house. You'll see the deck and the handrail above it. And the area we're trying to remove areas is basically that area. Nothing else in the house at all. That's all I have for now.
The applicant.
So to be clear, it would be all of the eave that's above that rear porch
Yes, sir.
and that eave return on the back, the door and the circular window.
Correct. Just
The rim.
trim around
Yeah.
the circular window.
Okay.
Everything else remains.
Any other questions? All right. Joey.
Thanks. So Bobby, Newman built our Heritage House, which is right next door in 2000. Whatever that year was, but we apparently before we moved in, the whole end of the house had an extension. It had been removed before we bought the house, so that there was an existing deck. When he built the garage carriage house, we just had that deck enclosed. So I wish we had just enclosed it all the way up, but we didn't. But we don't want to take down siding or change anything except just enclose that upper part. That's the only thing we're proposing. We're not trying to change any part of the house.
All right, do we have anyone speaking to the public?
Pete Utility Historic Charleston Foundation, we appreciated the opportunity to visit the site this morning, and we would just respectfully request that the original eve and eve return be retained.
Laurel Bay with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The PSC appreciated the opportunity to visit the site this morning. We would like to see the circular window, eave, and eve return preserved to the greatest extent possible and ask that any demolition occur underneath those features so that character defining features are preserved and the evolution of the structure is clearly legible. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else speaking? That's it. Frank, you could give us any staff comments and recommendations, please.
Staff had some observations, first verifying the request, which is already done. That the request included the handrail, second floor deck, fascia, soffit, corner trim, gable, windows, side door, and that door trim. The proposed area is highly visible due to the corner spot. And the proposed roof demolition we were unclear on, we did review the permit to confirm, and it doesn't seem to match what is being proposed. So we were confused there. And the applicant description this morning included the encapsulation of the entire wall, which BR would consider a demolition of that wall. Staff recommendation is an approval of the deck and door demolition, but denial of all else.
Okay. All right, Mr. Newman, did you want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the public comment or the staff comments?
There is no roof demolition. I'm reading your notes up here. There's no demolition on it. We're gonna, if it's hard to tell you what we're gonna do, because you don't allow it back here. Our plan is to put basically a sitting room, and it doesn't even touch the roof above. It's a lower roof, and it joins back into the backside, but the front would be a lower. Encapsulation of an entire wall, I'm not sure what that means. That a bigger word here.
Anytime you're covering up an element, it's technically considered demolition because then it takes it out of our purview.
Okay.
So, yeah.
We wouldn't be covering up anything. We're literally gonna leave the siding exactly as it is, and the window. And the railing is not original to the structure of the house.
Public comment and the applicant's presentation is now closed and then the board discussion.
I don't have any issue with the, or either, but the, gable cornice and the gable return.
Yeah.
I think,
It
should not be demolished or covered or altered. And, also that little round window is a problem. I'm definitely opposed to removing, covering or altering the gable cornice and gable return.
I agree with that.
I agree with that. It's a very strong character defining feature of the house, and any type of, I know we don't consider what's going back, but any type of an addition above that deck could easily tuck underneath.
Right. I think that would be a much more logical way to approach it, and could be done carefully and smoothly.
Yeah.
I'm in agreement with that.
Can I make a motion to approve demolition with the exception of the eave and eve return? And to retain the window and trim and move it up a little if they had to? Would that make the board happy, or?
I don't,
But
I don't think that would be under.
well, this is just a demolition
Oh,
request, so I don't
okay.
think we can
I understand.
sort of dictate what's going back.
All right,
I think.
scratch that.
All right, so then we have a motion on the floor for approval of demolition with the exception of the eve and eve return. Do I have a second?
It's a round window.
What about the?
What about the round
I just
window?
took it, I withdrew it. I didn't,
So is your motion okay with demolition of the round window?
well, they were keeping the round window and getting rid of the trim is what the plan said, right?
weird.
Oh, are you removing the window or just the trim?
Just the trim.
Oh.
No,
Okay,
we're gonna keep the window.
okay, then it's just the trim, which I think the trim's not original, right?
The eaves are, we can keep that, we can
Yeah.
change the roof line of the new, just like the little.
Yeah.
cover.
Mhm.
That's fine.
Okay, then
Oh.
they're not demolishing the window, so it would
No.
be approval of demolition of everything with the exception of the eave and the eave return.
Correct.
And that's the motion on the floor.
Yes.
Do I have a second to
A
Gerald's
second.
motion? Thank you. Motion. Becky,
Yeah, in favor.
Fillmore,
Yeah, in favor.
Daryl,
Yay in favor.
Yeah, in favor.
the chair votes to the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, agenda item 5, 192 Nassau Street. Frankie, if you'll give us an introduction overview of the project, please.
192 Nassau is in East Side, Council District 4. It is not surveyed circa 1973 in the historic materials and demolition district. They are requesting approval for full demolition of the structure. Is property's location on Nassau. And I'm just turning it over to the applicant.
Chris Bonner with B City Architecture. The owner will be requesting the full demolition of 192 Nassau Street. Home, like as Frankie said, home was built 73, 74 per tax records. It's currently a brick box. For the general site plan, being built in the 70s, it was a product of maybe some poor suburban zoning in this part of town, and therefore doesn't meet the general kind of alignment of homes in the area. Therefore, it sits, a good 20 feet back. As you can see from the street view, all the other homes are pulled up towards the street, don't have, on-street parking as what. And the hope is to obviously remove this and be able to put something back that better fits into the street front and urban character of the area. Also, probably about a foot south of it in a flood zone, and over 80% were to be needed for the renovation. It would be about a foot below the flood zone. While it is brick, the brick isn't of a particular character that is common in Charleston. Kind of weird brown stuff. It's mostly few windows, lots of blank walls, and generally out of place with the neighborhood. And it's a historic character nearby. The front, the north with no windows almost. South has a couple windows. The rear has, little basic windows as well. That's all we have.
Any questions for the applicant? Thank you. Do we have anyone speaking to the public? All right, thank you. Give us the staff comments and recommendations, please.
We just staff to not oppose demolition.
Mr. Bonner, did you want to respond to clarify anything?
We appreciate staff not opposing demolition.
Public comment in the applicant's presentation is now closed. Move into board discussion and a vote.
It's not a high quality building. It's not a good representation of its time period. It's ill placed on the site for the neighborhood. So I would like to make a recommendation for approval.
Before I take the motion, any other thoughts, comments? All right, we have a motion on the floor for approval of demolition. Do I have a second to Bill's motion?
Second.
Becky, I put the motion to a vote. Daryl,
Yay in favor.
Fillmore,
Yeah, in favor.
Bill,
Yeah, in favor.
Becky.
Yay in favor.
The chair votes to the majority and the motion passes unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, agenda item 6, 211 Rutledge Avenue. Frankie, if you'll give us an introduction over the project, please.
Um, 211 Rutledge is in Timber, Elliott Borough. It's Council District 6. It is a category 3 in architecture inventory, circa 1950. in the Old City District. They're requesting demolition of additions. This is the property's location on Rutledge. I will turn it over to the applicant.
And just to clarify, and I know, I think you mentioned this this morning, but just to clarify for everyone, we're only hearing the demo request, mentioned item 6, and item 7 will be the relocation. So only present those elements here.
Thank you, thank you all for your time, and I enjoyed seeing you this morning on site. As you know, we were here with the previous submittal. We talked a little bit about that this morning. So I just want to kind of update you on where we are since then. Since the last time that we were together here in this room, we have made a couple of alterations to our plan, and we've engaged some additional team members. Of course, NK Partners, 3 local guys who are the development team on this. Butler Preservation is still involved in the project. She provided additional research after the last meeting for us on a couple of issues. Christina couldn't be here tonight because of Clemson's academic kickoff. But then we also said, as a gut check, let's go out and engage some additional preservation expertise. And so we've engaged Progress Preservation. Jonathan Poston is here with us tonight. And it was really sort of a gut check. Is it, are the way we're thinking about this in line with national standards for historic preservation? And so who better than an accomplished Charleston historian and former regional director for the National Trust? And so he's here with us tonight and may make comments on. And then Ellis Lessman, who's a property attorney, who's very used to doing complicated historic properties on the peninsula. And he's really helping us sort of map our way through the process and keeping us focused on specific issues in front of us. So they're all here tonight and may also respond to comments or questions if needed. The other things we've done is since last time we saw you, you all of course have seen Christina's 96-page long preservation report. But it is a little dense and it's a little complicated to get through, and we realized it after the last meeting. So what we've done in this submittal is really try to distill out that history for you to make it a lot easier to understand and clearer to follow. Of course, you all are very familiar with the location of the property. These images are germane because it really just points out the 2 primary additions that we're talking about that were done in 2008 and 2012. In 2008, there was the glass block addition added to that enclosed the historic Cannon Street facade. There was actually a kitchen addition that was done in 2008 to enclose an existing freestanding walk-in cooler that was outside from Welch's Seafood. And they built a structure around it. And that 2008 kitchen addition was then demolished in 2012 to add a modern kitchen addition with a modern walk-in cooler and the trash enclosure. So those are really the 2 phases of addition that we're talking about today, and you can see them identified in the photos here. And then from the back as well, you can see sort of where they show up on the back in the interior part of the corridor. It's notable in the glass block addition actually also enclosed not only the Cannon Street facade, but actually enclosed part of the curved historic canopy on the corner of the building. You can see it. There's some other photos you can see it inside at the end of the moment there. I said we sort of distilled the history a little better. This is the 7th building to sit on this site. I'll run through this very quickly. The first structures on the site were the Daniel Cannon Webb House in the very early 1800s. A large house with a kitchen house behind it. That building those structures were demolished sometime around the mid-century. The site is shown as vacant in the mid 1800s. And then as you move forward into the late 1800s, the descendants of the same family constructed a new, larger house with a large kitchen house that also is supposed to have had an apartment in it. We're referring to that as the S.L. Webb House in the 1870s. You can see it also in that 1882 Lambeau plat. That persisted into the early 1900s. In 1912, an additional structure, an office building that faced Cannon Street was added to the property. We believe from Christina's research there was a medical professional operating out of that office, and that office sat up very close to Cannon Street. And then in 1929, you see the first gas station that was built on the site by Standard Oil, which was a small building with a large canopy that came all the way out to Cannon Street. And then in 1944, there was a small block building that was added, presumably restrooms for the filling station. And then there was also addition that was done to the main house, a one-story addition that extended commercial use. By that point, the ground floor of the main house had converted to commercial uses along Rutledge. And so that little one-story addition up there in the top right corner was made to extend some of that commercial use along Rutledge. And then all of that was demolished in 1950 to make way for the current building, the filling station, the standard one built there, known as the Esso service station. This was a standard model station that was built all over the country at the time by Esso, sort of the hallmark of shifting to sort of standardized building. And so you see 4 other examples below there in this layout of the exact same station built in other parts of the country. The gas station use closed in the late 80s, and the building sat empty for a while, went through some damage. You can see in this photo, its original pump islands and the original Esso sign still there on the site. But then most of the site features were demolished, the pump islands, the corner sign, the oil pits in the service bays, things of that nature. It was converted into European salvage, which was like an architectural salvage company. And then later it became Welch's Seafood. They did a lot of changes to the rear wall to create a loading bay and closing windows, and lost a lot of historic fabrics there. And then in the early the late 2000s is when Fuel took over the property and constructed the first phase of additions, the glass block addition and the original kitchen addition. And then in 2012, they demolished that 2008 kitchen enclosure to build a modern kitchen and walk-in structure. This is from Christina's report, also sort of describes all the different things that were done to the building during those phases of renovation. This isn't so much germane to our conversation right now because we're not proposing to change anything on the historic structure. So this is the core of what we're proposing as far as demolition at this point, which I believe is a lot clearer. We did hear PSC's comments and other comments from folks at the last meeting that in terms of retaining the entire footprint of this historic building and any fabric, whether it's patched into new fabric or not, that may be part of that historic structure. So that's what we're proposing, the historic footprint and the historic corner canopy, and just the removal of the additions that were done in the 2000s. You can see in this photo a little closer, a little better, where that canopy was enclosed by that 2008 addition. It's still under there. So we'd love to be able to see that again from the street. And then there's a series of elevations in here. The green is the historic buildings being retained, and the gray in this graphic language is the non-historic pieces that we're proposing to remove. Okay. Tried to keep this proposal very simple.
Thank you.
The applicant?
I do. Curiosity, I mean, the idea here, the approach is to save this historic building, right? And so with that approach, then removing the more modern additions is in line with your approach to save this historic building. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. I mean, one of the things I've said sort of 7 months ago when we started the process, before we ever met with you all, I told our development team, everybody, I told HCF and PSC that we value the building. We want to save it. We believe it's a strong design driver for a master plan. And we think it's, quite frankly, a lovable building. And we said that from the very beginning. We got a little too nitty with following some of the preservation recommendations that came out of our preservation analysis. And I think that demolition and relocation plan that we considered last time we were together was just a little too complicated. It was a little too clear. There were a lot of things that were sort of not well understood about it. And so I think this is a lot cleaner. It's a lot simpler. It aligns with comments we heard from the Preservation Society. And so we think this is a much better approach.
Remove those in essence and restore the original parts of the exterior of the building that were sort of left exposed by the removal.
Correct. Yeah. And in particular, you know, that Cannon Street facade, I mean, that was a hallmark of the Esso stations, that you saw those 2 doors with that series of punch windows. That was a hallmark. You know, you see it in those photos of the other Esso stations. It's in every single one. wall was like a feature of this building. And so part of, and which is not to say that the glass block was not done sensitively, it was. But it also covered up a historic facade that we would like to have exposed to the street again.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. Do we have anyone speaking from the public?
Good evening. I'm incredibly concerned about this part of the development effort. I just don't see any reason we should allow the developer to alter the building at all. It's a bold, gorgeous example, of Art Moderne. It's one of the finest examples of a 1949 Art Moderne building we can find anywhere in this region. They admit themselves in the review of the site that the 2008 glass block addition that they want to demolish was constructed properly to the original period. They clearly only want to demolish it now because it's convenient for them to then be able to move it. That is, we can tell that. We know that, and they also want to demolish quite a bit of original detail on the back of the building, including original windows and things that are just going to not be part of the building if it is moved in the plan that they're putting forward. I mean, that's pretty much the end of my comments on this part of it. I have a lot more to say on the next part.
What was your name, sir?
My name is Max Culler. I own and operate a restaurant a block away, Estadio, on 122 Spring Street. And yeah, this is would be a great loss to the character of our neighborhood. Great loss.
Is there anyone else speaking?
Thanks, Andrew Gould. I live nearby on Catfiddle Street, and I'm also representing the Kenbo Elliott Bower Neighborhood Association. We support the proposed demolition of the additions. We think the whole plan here is very good and understand that that's a necessary part of it. Thank you.
Is anyone else speaking? All right, Frank, if you give us any staff comments and recommendations, please.
We just have the observation that staff does not object to the demolition of the non-historic addition.
Okay, did the applicant want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the public comment and city staff comments and recommendations?
Yes, I'll just address the comment about, the comment made that we were proposing to remove historic elements of the rear facade and those things. That is not the case. We're not proposing any alterations to the rear facade of the historic.
Okay, thank you. All right, public comment and the applicant presentation is now closed. We're moving to board discussions and a vote.
If the purpose of removing the additions is to return the building to its original historic form, I don't think I would be opposed to it. It's the evolution is relatively recent. I mean, there's some argument to be made that it demonstrates the evolution of the building and the evolution of its adaptive use. I think that is a reasonable argument, but I think if other side of that, if the intent is to return this building to its original 1950s architecture, and that more appropriately identifies its sort of cultural authenticity and what it was, what it meant to the sort of to the evolution of history in the 1950s. I think I would not oppose it. I would recommend, of course, that the removal should not destroy existing historic fabric or original form, and that removal leaves voids the original form and should be appropriately replicated.
I totally agree.
I agree with that. Or did you want to make that motion? You had good language.
Okay, I would say I'll make a motion for approval of demolition or condition that any removal, that all the removal should not destroy existing historic fabric or original form of the structure. And where removal leaves voids in the original form should be appropriately replicated.
Right, we have a motion on the floor for approval of demolition with the board condition that any removal should not destroy any original historic fabric or form. And where the demolition leaves voids, the original form should be replicated. All right, do I have a second to Fillmore's motion?
I'll second it.
Daryl, I'll put the motion to the vote. Becky,
Yeah, in favor.
Bill,
Yeah, in favor.
Fillmore,
In favor.
Daryl.
Yeah, in favor.
Chair votes for the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Okay, agenda item 7 is 211 Rutledge Avenue. Frank, if you'll give us an introduction overview, or did you?
I will just
Turn it
read the
over.
description that they're requesting conceptual approval for relocation of the building. And then I'll turn it back over to the applicant.
So, hello again. And I'll start my commentary with, just again, sort of reminding us where we were. We had a sort of mixed up in that complicated earlier request, the proposal to move the 2 street facing walls. We at the time, we were not proposing to move the rear facing walls because our preservationist had indicated there wasn't much historic fabric left in those walls. I think the thing about this project is that it's unique in some ways when we look at these sort of things, because the old city district does not have a defined period of significance. If we were a block further south, we would be talking about the period of significance defined by the National Register District. And so we look at the whole history of this thing, and it starts to get pretty complicated. We got a little too complicated in that previous submittal, but we heard the comments from the board, we heard the comments from PSC. We went back to the drawing board, and we are now currently proposing to move the entire structure in its historic form to the corner from its current location. And so I'll just read a little bit of a prepared statement. You have this in your submittal, but it's a good way for me to organize my thoughts. The historic building at 211 Rutledge Avenue operated as a gas station and a service center for 39 years, from 1950 to 1989. That use has not existed on the site for almost 37 years, wherein the building is hosted at least 3 other different commercial uses. This is in fact the 7th building to occupy the site. So the site has a very strong history of things kind of coming and going and that sort of thing. While most of the character defining features of the building remain, with its streamlined art modern architectural style, which we highly value, all of the character defining features of its use as a gas station, as defined by the National Park Service in Preservation Brief 46, pump islands, signage, mechanical lifts, even the vehicle circulation pattern on the site, stacked drive-throughs parallel to the building versus head-in perpendicular parking that now obstructs the building. All of those things have been gone from the site for over 2 decades. At the time that the building ceased to operate as a gas station, it would not have been considered a historic use by definition, by the 50-year definition. The character defining feature of this site and its contribution to the character of the Canterbury neighborhood is its history of building change over 200 years and renewal over those 200 years, and the myriad residential and commercial uses that have made this site home, not its brief use of this building as a gas station. In order to preserve this building as a beloved example of streamlined art modern architecture within Charleston, while also allowing this prominent corner site to continue to renew and repair the decisions that were made with auto-oriented choices of the mid-20th century, this application proposes to relocate the entire historic commercial building at 211 Rutledge Avenue, minus the 21st century additions. The 21st century additions. To avoid facadism, as was brought up in the previous consideration, the building will be relocated in its entirety and undergo restoration of the facades, including repairs of the art modern curb incurred through neglect and fire riot damage in 2020, and enable continued commercial adaptive reuse of the building, which has not functioned as a gas station in nearly 40 years. The building is proposed to retain its form, mass, style, and materials with no additional residential stories proposed on top of it. We've sort of gone back to the drawing board. You all would have seen it something earlier that was contemplating that. Allowing the building to continue to read of a one-story vernacular art modern building on its original site in a prominent corner location with its original orientation to the 2 primary streets. Now, because it's an independent submittal, there's a lot of repeat in terms of the history of the site and whatnot in here. I'll fast forward through here. And get to really the crux of the question here. Which is the location on site something that needs to be retained, or can the building still be understood and read as an example of streamlined art modern architecture on the corner? The suggestion has been made that as the building stands today, is the only way it can be understood in its historic location. But we would point out the things that I just mentioned, that all of the character defining features of that location are gone and have been gone for a very long time. In addition, the graph that you see on screen sort of illustrates that even the vehicle circulation, which would have been a hallmark of that location, comprises multiple stacked drive lanes parallel to the building facades, allowing drive-up access to pump islands and service bays, and maintaining the visual access to the architecture has been gone from the site for nearly 24 years. The current vehicle configuration is actually the opposite, with perpendicular parking to the building, and much of that parking blocks the original view of the service bay doors, which would have been historically unobstructed in their view, as well as the Cannon Street facade. The additional points that we would just sort of like to make is that this is not uncommon to see an art movement or streamlined art movement or a commercial building on a corner. It is a valid way to understand this type of architecture. And the building has been here for about 80 years. About half that time was a gas station, about half that time it was 3 other uses, soon to be a 4th. And so we think that it is valid to think of it as a commercial building, not necessarily as a gas station at this point in time. So this is the current proposal. Again, we tried to make it very, very simple as opposed to the complicated proposal you saw previously. It's essentially to move everything that you see to the corner, all 4 walls, the roof, the canopy, restore the original street-facing facades. We're a little unclear if what is underneath some vegetation on the canopy. Originally, these Esso stations had a channel that ran along the edge of the canopy that was typically a different color, but it's now covered up. That may have been from the fire damage in 2020. But the current proposal is to move everything you see minus the additions that we talked about earlier to the corner. There was questions last time we were together about the feasibility of building relocation. You have a letter in your packet from Carolina House Movers, who's done a lot of work on the Charleston Peninsula, raising and moving structures. They've provided, you can see in this layout, sort of a step-by-step of how they would do it, and assured us that having evaluated the building, they don't have any concerns about the feasibility of it. And so. And then there's some context elevations here that show essentially the building on the corner of some of the existing buildings, as well as the PUD that's approved across the way, and what the current 3-story massing would start to allow on the remainder of the site.
Any questions for the applicant? Thank you. Do we have anyone speaking from the public?
Hi, Andrew Gould. I think it's very telling to consider that this site has been part of our neighborhood fabric for 200 years, with a series of beautiful historic contributing buildings prior to the construction of this gas station. And the way our neighborhood association conceives of this proposed development is not so much as destroying something from the 1950s, but restoring a vision of the neighborhood from the 19th century, which is to say that this should be a lot that has multiple buildings up to the sidewalk, multiple uses, people living there, something that actually, is part of the neighborhood. And we've made a lot of progress with this type of urban restoration along the Spring and Cannon corridors in recent years. As I'm sure you know, there's been several quite substantial corner buildings that have been built along these streets. And our neighborhood association went so far as to support some quite considerable density variances and parking variances before the BZA in order to enable urban projects of that kind. So that just illustrates the extent to which politically our neighborhood is really in favor of urban redevelopment of corner lots, building substantial buildings that are in scale to these two large commercial corridor streets that run through our neighborhood. And in that vein, we're very supportive of this proposal as a whole. It's great to be able to save the little 1950s building, but even more importantly, it's great to be able to actually develop this lot and have people living here in the neighborhood, people who can patronize these little shops and restaurants that occupy the mid-century commercial structures. Yeah, I would say, 90% of the people who have spoken at our neighborhood association have been very supportive of this. And, nobody really sees the context, the sort of site context argument as being very pertinent here. Mostly just because the way this gas station worked was the same way every gas station works. I can understand the argument that, like, if you're looking at a plantation and it's got a plantation house and it's got its array of oaks and it's got its row of slave cabins, that there's like a social history of a bygone era that we might not understand without that site context. But that's not the case here. This is just a gas station, and it's like there's not a problem of people not understanding how gas stations used to work. They work exactly the same now as they worked then. So I just don't see any historical or social or cultural value at all in preserving the site context of the structure. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else speaking?
Good evening. I'm Jonathan Poston with Progress Preservation. We are assisting the applicants with this project and with the preservation aspects of this project. And I just wanted to point out that you can see from Christina Butler's report how many guises this property has had over 200 years, with like so many Charleston buildings uptown in the early 20th century. Standard Oil eyed it for a gas station, and that happened with the Manigault House and other notable properties. And the first gas station was on the street, was in a different location than this, but that is being proposed. But nonetheless, that gas station disappeared. The property has been through, in my time in Charleston from the early 80s, it went through all these different guises. And I remember it as a gas station briefly, and then when it was abandoned for a good while, and then became the provisions or seafood store, and then eventually the restaurant. But those were adaptive reuses. The first ones were unsuccessful compared to the later ones, but it's really important in looking at an adaptive reuse that you consider whether that adaptive reuse is viable for preservation at present. And I would argue that preservation at present, that particular adaptive reuse that was fine 20 years ago may not be as well. And to forbid the owners from shifting it so they can retain the building, as well as from changing it and not allowing the property to have more developable square footage, would be condemning them to stay with the same adaptive reuse. And that would be, from an urbanist standpoint, a very wrong direction. So I am here to support the application. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else speaking?
Hi, I'm Bill Shandell. I live in the neighborhood. I'm hearing various discussions from different points of view. I think as any of us drive down the street or walk down the street, we see this building set back in a context that was the thing years ago. And it is to an extent today where we park in front of buildings. But I've got a lady friend that lives over in Mount Pleasant. She used to take her 100-year-old mother to have lunch here. And she said, gosh, that building, it takes me back. And when I think of Charleston, that's That's what I think of. We don't throw things away. We hold on to things. It's much more than just the concrete blocks that one could get at Home Depot. It's the place, the essence of place created by the parking is around the building as well. Not to mention that has the side benefit of giving more parking in a neighborhood that keeps losing parking to businesses. I mean, it's a side benefit that's already there. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Glenn Maddox. I'm a Charleston resident and I own a business located north of the Fuel Cantina on Rutledge Avenue. I spoke in favor of the applicant's proposal at the previous meeting, and I'm doing so again today. Previously, the application was denied because the board felt that the building's location within the site was important historical context. This logic implies that we are incapable of appreciating art outside of its original confines. Many times, manipulating those confines, the life of the artifact in question evolves and its history is extended to many more people. The USS Yorktown earned 11 battle starts in World War II. Do you think civilians and veterans alike can't appreciate its significance in foreign wars now that it rests in the Charleston Harbor today? The board has an applicant prepared to give this building and address a renewed life, a different life, an evolution. The many years that this building has spent in disrepair proves that these opportunities are not limitless. The board can write an illustrative next chapter with an approval, or it can stunt the plot development with a denial. If this precedent is introduced, shouldn't we also seriously consider the preservation of the Exxon station at Mount Pleasant and King Street, which turns 50 in 9 years and is a keystone in the city's redevelopment of the Upper Peninsula? Our history should enlighten the present, not paralyze our future. For this reason, I am advocating that the board approve the application. Thank you.
Anyone else speaking?
Hello again, Max Keller, owner operator of Stadio 122 Spring. The job of this board is not to analyze past zoning failures on this lot, but to determine if it is indeed worth preserving in its current form. If the goal is further restoration, as Fillmore says, to its original 50s form, then the building certainly should not be allowed to be relocated. The only rationale for saying this is no longer adaptively reusable is ridiculous and driven only by financial interest. There is significant precedent for continuing preserving 211 Rutledge as it stands. Other such mid-century service centers in the neighborhood have been required to be preserved as they were, with their historic setbacks preserved. And it would surely be a dangerous new precedent if the bar were to stray away from the rationale of its past rulings here. As is, the building's historic spatial relationship within the lot is gracefully maintained, paying homage to its original use, maintaining its original setback positioning on the lot, while also providing quite a bit of prime usable outdoor space in front of and behind the structure. There are 14 spots currently. The new zone plan has 9. We already have parking issues in the neighborhood. How is this helping anything? I go on. 211 Rutledge is a rare treat of an airy footprint in the overly increasingly over-urbanified Charleston and Cannonboro neighborhood in particular. This is a very important distinction to us who live and work here and have seen more and more loss to density. The building could be so gracefully repurposed as is and would be an absolute travesty if it becomes another densely packed vacation rental complex rather than a vibrant part of the neighborhood accessible to all. This is not part of the neighborhood. This is for wealthy people coming to stay here and destroy our neighborhood. I have less and less locals every day at my restaurant because of this stuff. This is not an effort at historic preservation or renovation, but a Disneyfication at best. The existing lot has served the neighborhood well, with its unique historic building serving as a lively restaurant and gathering space for over 20 years. Fuel would not have been in business for 17 years if it wasn't doing well for a while. There is no reason it couldn't be reborn with a thriving concept for today's Charleston. The proposal to move what seems to be whatever can realistically be salvaged without too much trouble of the existing historic building to the corner after demo would take away not just the elements of the building, but would also completely disrupt the lovely land on which it sits upon. It's not the job of the board to determine parking variances, but the existing space surely should not be penalized for having a large parking lot in front. For one, this has been required by the city. If the city decided that it wasn't necessary, which at the moment it seems to be, as parking overcrowding is an increasing issue, it could also be repurposed as a lovely green space, serving residents, visitors, and pollinators. I do understand that that's not relevant to this particular discussion, but I want to make sure we all do understand that that's what's going on with that parking lot. And I'm also going to add another part because I think it's important to this particular discussion. We are aware of the developer's current plan for whatever remains of the building to be jammed in the front as to give way for a series of anonymous mid-rises. And while this part is technically outside of this board's business and purview and outside the scope of the specific request, I feel no choice but to address this as well. I attended the last board meeting in which the applicant tried to get the last version through. And for some reason, when public discussion was over, the board decided to start talking about the neighborhood needing more density and needing this. It does not, okay? It does not need our history bulldozed. And that is not what you're here for. You're here to determine if this should be preserved. The last thing I have to say, I'll conclude my comment reminding the board that architectural history is built not just by the beautiful, but also by the bold. While a mid-century service station may not have the same relevance to the bar as an antebellum home, this now rare and quite boldly unique structure is deserving of the same respect and spirit to preserve as our city's finest buildings. Thank you.
Anyone else speaking?
Laurel Fay with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The previous request to demolish historic portions of this building and relocate the facade was a non-starter, and we thank the board for holding the line. As we previously stated, relocation should never be the first course of action, and the threshold for approval should be very high. From an architectural standpoint, it is positive that this approach retains the streamlined modern buildings, original form, materials, context, and orientation. We also appreciate that the applicant has indicated that a vertical addition is no longer contemplated for the historic building. However, this is a very significant request for flexibility. We urge the board to use their authority to condition relocation on the most sensitive possible treatment of this building moving forward. The future plans provided in this application and concept renderings shown in a recent zoning submittal represent a jarring departure from the historic character and use of the site. The PSC asks the board to condition any decision to ensure that future development honors the historic form and design of this building and enhances the city's urban environment, taking into consideration site planning, height, scale, mass, and architectural quality. Thank you.
Utility Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF opposes the proposed relocation of 211 Rutledge Avenue. This distinctive mid-century building constructed as a gas station is a landmark deeply tied to its neighborhood context, a strong example of adaptive reuse, and its location on the lot to facilitate cars entering the property for fuel or service is a defining aspect of its historic scene. It represents Charleston's mid-century commercial development, the rise of the automobile, and a transformational time in Charleston's history, a time of growth, post-war optimism, and new opportunity. Preservation standards at the national, state, and local levels all emphasize maintaining historic spatial relationships, including setting and placement. In other words, it should be obvious to fresh eyes that the site is a former gas station. In the letter we shared with the VAR earlier this week, there are 7 other examples of similar stations across the peninsula that have been successfully adapted for reuse, including Tiger Lily, Java Biscuit, and Leon's.
demonstrating the viability of continued use without relocation. With this application, relocation is proposed not to preserve or save the building, but to enable redevelopment and increase density. Treating the historic structure as an obstacle rather than a contributing resource undermines its significance and would fundamentally alter the scale and character of the site. Once moved, the building will lose the integrity of its setting and a loss that cannot be mitigated. We also have concerns that the approved partial demolitions, this building would not survive relocation. Furthermore, we believe relocation of this structure is akin to Disneyification, defined as a process in which real places, objects, or cultural elements are turned into decorative props, divorced from the context and meaning that make them authentic. 211 Rutledge's placement, orientation, and relationship to the lot surrounding streets are integral to its significance, and moving it would strip away that context, producing a curated, sanitized version of history, instead of one grounded in place, continuity, and lived experience. If 211 Rutledge is approved for relocation, we have concerns it will spark a wave of similar requests to move historic structures for development purposes. For these reasons, HCF strongly opposes the proposed relocation of 211 Rutledge Avenue and respectfully recommends denial.
Do we have anyone else speaking from the public?
My name is Simmons Young. I'm an architect. I work in the neighborhood on Morris Street, a few blocks away. And I think that it is nice that a building would occupy the corner street in an urban environment rather than a parking lot. So I would applaud the applicant on restoring the existing structure.
Is there anyone else speaking? All right, Frankie, if you give us the staff comments and recommendations, please.
Staff had some observations. One, staff would not oppose the relocation of the entire historic structure, assuming all exterior materials can be protected and moved intact and then restored. Staff condition for approval would be the inclusion of a relocation plan, including a complete engineer report to return, which would return to the board for review and approval. And I will add, this is how BAR Large recently approved a relocation, was requiring an engineer plan to be provided and therefore review to approve it. Staff recommendation is an approval with board staff conditions.
Thank you, Frankie. The applicant want to clarify or respond to anything raised in the public comment or the city staff comments and recommendations?
Sure. So a lot to unpack in the comments there. I'll generally respond by saying that kind of representing what I indicated earlier, that in the old city district, we do not have a defined period of significance. So there's a lot of interpretation that has to go on in this district when we address preservation issues, which is why we've engaged a lot of really great experts to help us do that. And so the question, I guess I would respond to a lot of the commentary with the question, which is, well, first a statement that we agree with a lot of what was said, even from people who are opposing the project. We love the building. We think it's a fantastic example of streamlined art modern architecture, and we're trying very hard to save it while also threading the needle between urban design for the neighborhood, correcting maybe some auto-centric choices of the mid-century, and also preserving a great example of the mid-century building. So we're trying to thread that needle here. So the question I guess I would pose in response is not necessarily are the people who spoke in opposition wrong, but are we both right? Are there multiple ways to look at preservation of this site and this building? And is the way that we're proposing to look at it unreasonable or unqualified or based on inaccurate research? And I would take the position that our proposal is reasonable, and it is based on a lot of research and a lot of expert input and a lot of meetings with the neighborhood association and going all the way back 7 months to meetings with HCF and Preservation Society. And that's how we've kind of gotten here. And so I don't want to, kind of go point by point. I will say a couple of specific things. I wasn't sent a email earlier this week, but I suspect it's very similar to the one they sent when we were here previously, where they referenced several other mid-century buildings. I took a look at the examples that were in their email. 131 Spring Tree Tiger Lily, which reference is another early 20th century custom architectural design, which is actually defined by the National Park Service as an entirely different period of gas station development. So it is not analogous to this building. It is not a mid-century building, and it's not even of the same period as this building. The other examples do share the fact that they are mid-century modern designs in a style similar to 211 Rutledge. However, most of them also front a single primary street. Some, like Leon's, have a 0 lot line condition on one street face, and all are mostly unchanged in terms of their historic integrity. Whereas we have lost a lot of fabric on this building. We've lost the pump islands, we've lost the gas canopies, we've lost the corner sign, all of the things that indicate it was a gas station. The Rutledge Cab Company is an outlier in that it sits in an area that was historically a little more industrial to the very north of the neighborhood, and it has actually had its entire primary facade enclosed in a modern addition. But you can't even see the primary facade on that mid-century modern gas station anymore. So I just think that while I appreciate that there are other mid-century modern structures in the neighborhood, I don't think that the analogies are quite the same as this building. Most of those are from an earlier period or have 0 lot line conditions on one side of them. This does not. So I just think they're qualitatively different. And then I guess the other specific thing, which I think I may have mentioned to you all before, but because we don't have that period of significance and we don't have those National Register standards that we can apply necessarily here, that we would have a block south of here. What do we look at? We have one thing in our ordinance. We have the building rating system where we rate buildings 1 through 4, and they have qualitative and quantitative directives that come with each one of them. In groups 1 and 2, which are both defined as exceptional and group 2 excellent, both of those have a specific language in the descriptions of those groups that they are to be preserved in situ. Groups 3 and 4, our building is a group 3 building, specifically do not have that language, which would seem to imply, I think reasonably imply, that it is a reasonable preservation strategy to preserve the building in its entirety, not necessarily in its exact location. But we are, in terms of what was referenced by HCF in terms of spatial relationships, we are preserving its orientation to Cannon and Rutledge. We are actually restoring the view of the service bays, which are currently blocked by perpendicular parking, and the historic Cannon Street facade in this operation. So I do think that we are taking a reasonable, measured, researched approach to this preservation project, and I would respectfully ask for you all to consider that in your deliberation. I don't know if any of my team have any follow-ups that you.
All right, public comments and the applicant's presentation is not closed, so we're going to more discussion and a vote. Bill, why don't you start?
Okay. I think that this is very complex. It's complex for a number of reasons. Of which is this is a modest 1950s building, and even though it's certainly, I think, architectural style or typology that is very recognizable from that period. It's still modest. I think these buildings are often overlooked and underserved preservation. So start there. The other thing is I think I spent a lot of time thinking about this. I have a page and a half typed notes about it. I think the first question you got to ask is why save it. So I think we have I think that's can be answered in a lot of ways. We can save it because of materials. There's a lot of historic material there, even though that has been used in presentation here as both a positive and a negative. Okay, but there is a lot of historic material. So if what's important is just saving the material, maybe relocating the building doesn't matter. Because all you're saving is the historic. Or maybe it's the architecture. It's a kind of a unique architectural style. So if you're saving the architecture, then maybe it doesn't matter if you shove it up to the corner. You can put it in a museum and save the architecture. And so maybe those two things are not as relevant to the question of whether it should be taken out of its present location and put on the corner. And to me, that comes back to the other kinds of value or significance or authenticity that this building has. And that is its relationship to the community culture, the history, the neighborhood, and the representation of historic and cultural change. And I think this building represents something reasonably significant. And if that's worth considering, then I think it becomes really important to consider whether it stays where it is or it gets moved. Because I think its representation of historic change lies in its representation as a 1950s gas station. And the fact that the sign has been lost and the pumps are gone, I'm not sure is significant. I'm open to obviously a discussion about this. The 1950s, we were becoming a nation of automobiles. And this represents that. And that represents a major shift socially, culturally, economically in our society. And so this little gas station, I think, represents more than just its historic material, its architecture, or just the fact that it's a gas station. And I think if it represents historic pattern of change, I'm going to read this directly because I thought about it and wrote it, tied to its original role as an SO gas station and sort of all of the myriad cultural, economic, social, and political ramifications of that change, then relocation is not appropriate because relocating it removes the setting that is inseparable from the cultural representation embodied in the structure.
Omar, what do you think about the argument that this site has gone through so many iterations? And so if anything, the history of it is an evolution.
Are we talking about building and its location, or are we talking about site and its history? I think for me, we're talking about that building and that location, that point in history. We're not talking about the history of that site. Now, if we're going to talk about the whole history of the site, then this is not the presentation we should, or the submittal we should be considering. We should be considering something else.
You're not considering the history that we heard as part of the prior application.
No, and I really appreciate the fact that this is an extremely well presented submittal with a ton of research. And I went through a lot of it, not all of it. So it's a lot of it. And I appreciate that. And I understand the site's had a lot of different stuff on it. What we are looking, all of that is now gone and not recoverable. What we're looking at is that gas station on that site. And for me, it's what it represents. I mean, certainly its material has value, historic material, and its architecture has value. But it has more value than that. To put it in fewer words, I'm opposed to the relocation.
It's a great preservation discussion.
Not opposed, you know, and the other thing, I'm sorry, Betty. If the goal in this preservation plan is to save that building, you know, from a preservation perspective, to save that building, it's only the architecture and only the material, and probably relocation is appropriate. But if that's the case, if you really want, take the modern additions off. why not, if that's the case, why not leave the modern additions? And if it's gonna represent something other than what it is, then maybe it should represent evolution. I think that evolution is pretty recent. But if the goal is to preserve the building beyond just its architecture and its materials, then I think it needs to stay in situ.
I disagree. We from time to time talk about it being important. Sometimes we'll see additions on houses from, the early 1800s, and they'll have these sort of tacked on additions. And when they're good examples of it, we want to almost show the evolution of Charleston. And so I think by leaving this building where it is, you're sort of stopping that evolution in its tracks. I think it's important to maintain the building, not stopping the evolution, but that's part of the story of this site. It's been through 7 different iterations. And so I do think it's important to maintain this building. I think it's a good example of its architecture, but I am not bothered by the relocation, and maybe I'm wrongly looking at the evolution of the site, but I think this allows it to continue evolving.
I think for the site, that's not an appropriate argument. I'm concentrating on the building and what it represents, as opposed to the site and what it I think that's a perfectly legitimate consideration. I don't see that that's what we're looking at here.
First of all, I appreciate that we have an applicant, an owner that's interested in preserving the building and restoring it, because I think most developers, they would see this building as a piece of garbage, and they would just want to get rid of it. So I do appreciate that very, very much. I have struggled with this greatly. And to me, it's is the building's location important enough contextual? Is it important that this building stay where it is in order to be worthy, or or is it better to, in some ways, right a wrong and have a building that anchors a corner instead of a parking lot out in front of it? I'm very much an urbanist, and I ask myself, would I rather see a parking lot, asphalt parking lot in perpetuity, or a building anchoring the corner? So, and then another thing that I have to take into account is that the neighborhood association itself, they've now supported this twice. And although I used to live in the neighborhood, it's not my neighborhood now, it's their neighborhood. And if this is something they want, I have to listen to that as well. I'm sort of leaning towards the relocation, may be okay.
I appreciate that, and I certainly appreciate the fact that there's, I think that the basic question of whether this little structure should be saved has been asked and answered pretty soundly across the board, including the owners of the property. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate, and I completely agree with you about density. But that's not what we're not doing urban planning. Talking about a historic building, its value, how we rate that value, and what kind of decision do we make from that? I absolutely disagree with you about I do have a different opinion about what kind of density and how that should be done, but I agree. But I'm not doing urban planning. But I completely understand your position and philosophically do not disagree.
I'm not addressing at all about what might go back behind this building, because in judging from what I see as placeholders, you know, there's going to be a whole lot of discussion on that if this is approved. And
but I'm trying not to look at that. I'm trying just to look at that building and its place. And you've got to make a judgment about how important that is. I mean, one way or the other. And I think it's legitimate to have that discussion, and certainly well-meaning people can come down on both sides of it. So I understand.
I think it's a great preservation discussion. It will probably surprise you that I actually think that since the building has been almost used, like the building's use has been almost the same amount as something besides a filling station. That initial use has that lifespan is gone. I mean, those features are gone, and its use has now become. I mean, I go a little bit to where Bill is, where it's become a little bit more of part of the urban fabric. And I honestly think it would be better served, despite my deep preservation roots. I actually think that the site and the building might be better served moving to the corner and engaging in it, where like you know, I can't help it. It's a better urban, and it almost honors the building better to move it to the corner where it's actually now positioned better, because it probably will be a store or a restaurant or an office. It's not going to be a filling station anymore.
It's never going to be a filling station.
Yeah, so it's use. So it's part of a different story now. So that
I think it's funny that, you know, if this building were going away and someone was wanting to build a new gas station on this site, we would be asking for it to sit on the corner and the pumps to be around back.
That's, but that doesn't relate to what this
building,
branch
and
what it was.
I
and
applaud
what its setting was, and I certainly
I
struggled a lot with the idea that, you know, that for practical idea that if you really the center of what you do, I think there are ways to overcome that. Also, and the fact that you're certainly, if you say that you've got to rethink that corner beyond what we just, you know, what is automatically being thought of, and that's just, you know, high density publishing term. Whatever whatever the end result is, you would have to rethink that corner. But I'm not going there either, because we're not doing urban planning, talking about preservation. And
would it be better, and I don't think it would be, you know, to have buildings built in front of this building? You would never see it again.
Right.
You know?
well, no, that wouldn't be better. But again, I'm trying to stick to what's right here before us, and not the urban planners, not be, you know, technical review and parking, you know, or anything else. It's just sticking to this question, and this is a significant conundrum. It's a conundrum, you know, in whenever we look at preservation issues, this is a serious. This is a very difficult conundrum. And
Daryl, what do you?
I think, man, this is a hard one, but the fact that Becky Finno is leaning on allowing it to move tilts my needle to that side. So I don't have anything to add. I would probably be on the side of relocating it.
I guess I applaud that they are preserving the building.
I do.
I mean, and maybe sometimes the best way to preserve the building is to I mean, we've allowed this throughout the city as we've seen the development. I mean, not to relate it to that, but sometimes it's just better served to reposition a building, like the building just has a new.
Some
life.
buildings retain, I think, more of their authenticity. There, it's easier to retain that.
Yeah.
Some buildings when they're moved than it is others.
Others, yeah.
And, but, you know, we certainly wouldn't take up, you know, and I'm gonna stray away from the argument about category 1, 2, 3, and 4 a little bit here, but because parliamentary standards, if we're talking that don't necessarily make that immediate distinction that only category 1 and 2 buildings should remain in situ. They say that buildings should remain in situ unless there is no other way to preserve them. And that would be historic buildings, not just category 1 and 2 buildings. We certainly would. A cat 2 building that's use had changed and move it so that that use could be better achieved. And I know this is not a category 2 building, but I struggle a little bit with making the argument that adaptive use of this building might be better served by moving it to the corner. I think that's probably potentially true, but struggle a little bit with sort of the philosophical concept behind that idea.
Yeah, I'm the last one that ever wants to see a building move. Yeah, I really am, but I think in this case, it kind of makes more sense to do it.
And I will remind everybody, I'm only one vote on.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like we might have some consensus. So I would say, Becky, do you want to make a motion, but maybe not?
Yeah, and I don't have the right one.
Becky, did you want to make a motion?
But
Did you want to make a motion?
I can, were there any, I can't remember the staff.
They're on the board.
Oh,
The staff conditions are.
yeah. So I make a motion for approval. I think, and I agree with staff that there should be a relocation plan. Do we want to see more than that? I mean, what kind of, do we need?
Do you want to see it back or do you want it to go to staff?
The relocation. Okay,
So
yeah, I think the relocation plan can,
We were all agreement that it should come back to you guys.
okay, so we'll,
That came from us.
okay, so
Okay.
the relocation is too hot.
So approval with staff condition,
Yeah.
number 1. All right, we have a motion on the floor for approval with staff condition number 1. Do I have a second to Becky's motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Daryl. Motion to vote. Bill?
Yeah, in favor.
Fillmore?
May oppose.
Becky?
Yeah, in favor.
Daryl?
Yeah, in favor.
Chair votes with the majority and the motion passes 4-4 and 1 again. Thank y'all.
Thank you for your time and thoughtful consideration.
We are going to take a 10-minute recess. We will reconvene at 6:32.
That was fun. Yeah, really. I thought it was great. I loved it.
Great. It's funny because I was so sick. And I said,
I'm very-
wait, like that's such.
I'm very, I'm very conflicted on this.
Act like it.
It's a beautiful opportunity to have a discussion of why we need with the city. The Department of Planning. We
This could.
For Charleston.
Yes.
And tune them up so that we, I mean, these are major articles. So it goes down to that little gas station. Everybody in academia is talking about.
Yeah.
Right.
But what they, most people understand is that all of that conversation comes right now. On Thursday night.
And they're
And
still
it would help
those
a lot
things
if a little bit of the ambiguity would go away.
Right, where you went to, like, I mean, it's like, you know, additions being sold. You know.
And that's the urban, I mean, all of it, they're all we're building is housing that the people who work here. That just pisses us off.
Single.
Of course.
And the placeholder should. No, board will see all that.
Oh, yeah.
The other
no,
board will see
this-
all that.
We're not looking at
But,
some huge, like, you look at that context, that's a 2.5 story. That's gotta be there.
Yeah, all those buildings. Yeah.
Like, that's not happening.
And the filings, you know, with enough control. It's hard once those developments get started. It's not, I assume all the buildings would come back to this, because I think they're all obviously under, individually under 10,000 square, so they were all. It's. There's, once those developments get going, there's a big, inertia. It's hard on the board, it's very difficult sometimes to really get control of it. They want to be 3 stories, or, you know, what you want to do, 2 stories or 2.5. Most, it's
Right.
really hard.
Yeah.
Just.
Well, zoning is so out of touch.
Yeah.
What we looked at this morning, you know, on Nassau, it's just like, they've so lost control of the whole context, being contextual.
But what I was arguing didn't have anything, honestly, did not have anything to do with what was going back there.
Oh, no, yeah, no,
Strictly
it's
a-
strictly a
This is
preservation.
a preservation
Which I
argument.
totally
Yeah.
agree. Yeah, totally honor that. It was kind of shocking.
So that's what we always had. This. You go right here. And so- Well, there's so much like material.
I know, the solar structure should have said. Look at all these structures that been saved. I'll get that, like, straight on you.
And if you go, this is really fun. I think you saw this.
This is side by side.
Yeah, the side by side.
We should like break and care off this funnel, you know. Fun. So very, so excited. She's so proud of herself. It's, so tell me about her, if she's incompetent or like is she a graduate? Yeah, and doing something extremely worthwhile. You know what, we should. Nice. Yeah. Yeah.
She's right. Really.
Well, you know, if she wants to, I guess, she can go down and actually.
It's kind of not, I mean, it was nothing. It wasn't just like.
It was like a win project.
Yeah,
It was like type person, and that's something I don't get solution, because there are certain roles for you to.
Was
You know, and there's. So anyway.
So.
I was actually, so I was excited of that. But yeah, I'm about to say right this.
That's when they built it back.
Yeah, but good idea. Like, are we? They're not actually. That's on it. Yeah, actually, yeah. Justice for today. So, yeah, really good. Yeah, I feel like I was doing like. It's so fun. I think it was. He's great. Yeah. And, yeah. All who could sit on the tree. What about now? Oh, really? Yeah, like. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So you were like, it was Josh. Yeah. And it's like, it's expensive too. Oh, it's like. No offer. Yeah. Like that's a lot of odds are very nice. Yeah, we're not going to get it.
I bought.
Like it'll be very simple. Yeah.
Sold my house yet.
You what?
I haven't sold my house yet.
Oh, is it been listed?
Yeah. Because I bought the house in summer.
All right, we are on agenda item 817, Pinkley Street. Frank, you can give us talk about your overview of the project, will you?
That's weird.
17 Pinckney is Charleston District 8. It is in category 4, circa 1870, in the Old Historic District. Requesting approval for demolition of rearmost structure on property. This is the property's location on Pinckney. And I will turn it over to the applicants.
Thank you, Dan Sweeney, Stumphouse. Appreciate you all meeting on site today. And really appreciate that break. That would have been a hard direct follow, but thank you for all of your work. Sincerely, I was the architect on the glass block edition of that building, so it's very interesting. So this.
If I'd known that, I wouldn't have put you after it.
So this project, we were in front of you in March, I believe, earlier this year. And at that time, we asked for three separate additions. We asked for approval for some demolitions to additions. There were three of them that we believed were in place. There is a small cottage at 17 Pinckney Street. We believe from the News and Courier archives, it was built in 1894. The Sanborn map shows it first on the 1902 map. The 1902 map does not show an outbuilding, but in the 1928 map, there is an outbuilding to the rearmost portion of this property, which is what we're talking about here tonight. The additions, the latest one being in 1992, it's the only addition that was documented, were linked. Ultimately, that last addition linked the front building to the rearmost building. So back in March, we received approval to remove the three additions that linked the two. At that time, I was going to ask for this structure to be removed, but at the time, our owners did not own the building at that time. And I couldn't get into the building and really kind of understand its age, and so I took it off the ask for that night. Here, it's important to point out that the rearmost building does, there's a News and Courier article that states that an outbuilding was built on site in 1914. Again, the first time an outbuilding shows up is in 1928. Today, and we've gone through this research and you've seen it, you can go through all this. This was presented last time, but it's germane here. One simple point is that the 1928 and 44 maps have some sort of label on this outbuilding. It's illegible, you can't read it. The 51 and 55 map clearly the word shed, and that comes through in the 63, 74 map as well. This is Pinckney Street is on your left here. The three additions I've grayed out between these two buildings, and we're talking here tonight about as you saw on site today, this drawing actually shows two sub-grade foundations that were found after we removed the planar materials to try and age this building. And those are very interesting. I think they probably they could predate any building, but maybe could be in the 1914 era. There's any best guess as to what they are. We hope to get John Fisher from the Charleston Museum. Thank you to Laura for passing his name along to help us understand that a little bit more. As the owner is very interested in this, their business is about the history of Charleston, and they like to know more about these things and possibly showcase them in the hardscape that would come next. That's not what we're talking about. Those are interesting features that we're seeing today. This is the roof line here. You can see the rearmost addition in the back. It is a shed roof. There's a tin roof that does seem to match the front building. But I believe when you look at all the framing, and Richard Marks, Moby, helped us with this, we did a sort of forensic dive into the materials that both buildings were framed from. The front building is the nails are cut nails, which were used prior to 1930. The rear building is all framed with wire nails, which was post 1930. And in fact, the News and Courier does have an article that says that there was a demolition request. That's all it says in 1935. So in the end, our best guess in this rearmost structure, this is the shed roof structure with the door in the third picture here that we're talking about, is that this building is probably some sort of, it was built somewhere between the 1930s and 1950s. A lot of the material that's there could have been built post 1950, just not sure. In terms of historic material, you saw it today. There's been a fire that was inside. The building is structurally intact. There's been a lot of new framing to the walls, not to the floors. In fact, all the floor joists are not sitting on the sill plates. But the siding is, I think all but 3 or 4 boards are new. There are 3 or 4 boards that have some charring from fire. But the studs, while there's some cracking and some failure, the roof is intact. The roof, it's also important to say, is put on with wire nails, which again leads us to believe that probably post 1930. And so here's again the photograph similar to what Frankie showed. The photograph on the left shows the shed roof addition more clearly. So in terms of historic material, we have some charred wood framing inside and turned mill roof, and a couple boards of siding, all of which Moby wants. we would donate that to him, but so we're asking for demolition of this rear structure.
Any questions for the applicant? Thank you. Do we have anyone speaking? Frankie, if you give us any staff comments and recommendations.
We just have the observation that we do not oppose the demolition.
Did you want to respond to or clarify anything, Mr. Sweeney?
No, thank you.
All right, public comment on the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and vote.
This building, the date on that front building, is that in a little bit of question? Well, maybe there was some discussion that it probably was built in 1900, maybe in the 1910s.
I think it's 1894, the front building, whereas in the Frankie had found that it was 1870, but there's a News and Courier article that a cottage was built at this address. It was actually addressed 9 Pinckney at the time, but anyway, it's the business parcel.
I would just try to sort of get the relationship between that building.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's possible that building is may not certainly be same date, but probably reasonably contemporary. The cut and wire nail thing is vague. I saw looked at when we looked at it, and I mean, cut nails were certainly in the market in the 1880s, but by the 1880s they were wire nails had been being produced for 30 years by that time, and they were a significant competitor to cut nails by the 1880s, so in the early 1980s. So it's probably, I don't know that gives it any real legitimacy, but it's I think it's reasonable that old building could be reasonably close temporary to the front building, but and then so that I looked at the sandboards again in that building clearly. Yeah, there is some little building there clearly on the 20th, but it's not very visible. And when but my instinct is it probably was a little standalone, ancillary building in some point in its life. It's not very visible, and there is. I agree. I don't think a lot of that sidings. There's not a lot of material there.
Yeah, I don't think there's much material. The back side of it is obviously new siding. It's even got felt paper, so it's got to be pretty recent. And then the floor joists, most of those are not even on the sills anymore. There's a lot in the fire damage. I don't know that there's a lot left there to preserve.
And when you get to that point, I don't really think I have an issue.
Make a motion.
I'll make a motion for approval as submitted.
We have a motion on the floor for approval of demolition. Have a second to Bill's motion.
I'll second it.
Carol, motion to vote. Fillmore,
Yeah, in favor.
Becky,
Yeah, in favor.
Bill,
Yeah, in favor.
Carol,
Yeah, in favor.
chair votes the majority, and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Agenda item 9, 237 King Street. Frankie, if you'll give us an introduction overview of the project.
237 King Street is in Charleston Village, Council District 8. It's a category 2 circa 1870 in the Old Historic District. They're requesting conceptual approval for structural masonry and stucco repairs for the UP. It is the property location on King Street. I will turn it over to Jeff.
Great, thank you. Simmons Young, I'm here on behalf of the owner of the building, Mr. Nicholas Rangoni. Let's see. So just there's some history here. I'm going to go through it pretty quickly because there's a little bit more to talk about than just that. But the building changed addresses in 1888, somewhere between 84 and 88. And just looking at the fires and some of the other destructive things, one of the items we read was that this was a shell of a building that was purchased in 1869 and rehabbed. But these fires seem to have avoided it. But the 1872 map has it where the red arrow is. It clearly shows the arched parapet wall. So we know that by that time, this storefront was in place, which matches up with the Poston article out of the buildings of Charleston. He references a newspaper. This is 1869. The grocery is saying they're going to move from one place to another, and they look forward to welcoming their patrons. And then the key word was handsome iron lintels from the Poston article. So we found this article, which talks about the cast iron elements that were put into place in 1870, which was a pretty popular thing to do around that time. And so there's this preservation brief on it and how they're all assembled and the issues that arise with it, which this building is illustrating. When I'm on the right-hand side, you can see where the front of that column is separating from the side. They're bolted together in that sort of axon. You can see where the bolts come together. So it's self-supporting structural that's itself. In the middle, that's sheet metal. It's been bent to replicate what was a cast iron. And on the left side, that's a fiberglass column with a cast aluminum capital. And this is Evans and Schmidt. They did some work in the late 80s on it. We worked on another building of theirs, 213 East Bay, which also had a cast iron front. And until we started taking it apart, we didn't realize the top was the Corinthian column was also fiberglass. This is what occurred is that the corbel on the left-hand side fell into the street and broke, and that's kind of what started all of this. So there was a stabilization by Rosen and Associates. And you can see at the parapet where the galvanized steel is braced, there's sort of diagonal braces. I've got a better drawing a little bit further down. And then at the bottom, there's some work to sort of hold the wall back. It's bellying out at the cast iron. Middle is where the cast iron element fell and it was pinned into the walls. There were these probably 3/8-inch pins that went in, 3 or 4 of them, and it looks like it was welded to the piece above. So the other interesting thing on the left-hand side, you can see that that's the joint of the front wall to the side wall, and it's not tied in. So there's some concern that at least the upper section of the parapet isn't tied back to the rest of the building. That's why that brace was put in. And then some rotted sills. This is the other side of the building on the far right, where there's a more significant crack. You can see daylight through the attic. And this is some of the on the right, this is interesting. It's a steel plate put in, I think, maybe during that 80s or 90s era. Maybe hold the brick together a little bit better. Anyway, we cut it when we were when Rosen was bracing the wall. A few other photos. Oh, you can see the pins actually pretty well in that middle photo. That's the type of pins that go up and down each of these cast iron elements. So I'll fast forward through some of these and we can come back just in the interest of trying to stay on my 10 minutes here. Some of the stucco at that corner particularly is cracking. So we would remove the loose stucco and repair it. We've got a piece of that over there. This is the brace that basically has got three of these ties going back 6 or 8 feet into the building. And that angle is there to sort of pull the wall in. Like I mentioned, it sort of bellies out. And then behind that plywood are 3 supports holding up the, assisting with the middle arch. The window is still there, so that's okay. So here's sort of what we're proposing to do. That's a little bit of the backstory. These are the same photos, just in the architectural drawings. On the lower side, the lower left, this is what was done by Rosen Associates. That's what's there now. So in the attic, you can see those diagonal braces on the upper left of this drawing that attach to the strapping on each side, and then the bracing at the bottom. And the goal, there's no changes to the floor plan. On the right side, you can see the goal is to put pattress plates to tie each floor level on the second floor, tie into the floor systems of the second floor and third floor. And then this drawing has a note that we would have a galvanized brace at the top, but since the time it was submitted in December, Mr. Rosen has decided that we can anchor within the building so that that top brace wouldn't need to be there. So other items down low at the street front where the pedestrians are, there's a piece of one of the corbels on the left-hand side of the cornice will be replaced. We have that. And also the cast iron column, the plan is to replace it after Mr. Rosen does his repair. So we'll cover it hopefully in the exact same plane. There may be that detail needs to be developed by Mr. Rosen. And we'll show that on the next round. As we go up, there's a lot of, this is a wood piece. And it's kind of a mixed match on the building, which is interesting. The below the windows, that's the wood, and then above is the cast iron lintels. So the one piece that we're looking to replace with another material, well, we're going to restore those where we can. Where we can't, we're proposing to replace those with GFRC. The portable at the top, we have here fiberglass, but we're open to the GFRC as well. As you all know, cast iron and masonry don't get along all that well, and the rust jacking that occurs is starting to cause problems through the building. So we're trying to prevent reintroducing that. Along the side, it does look like the brick needs to be taken down on the corners and rebuilt. We won't really know that until we get in a little bit. Smart Renovations worked with us on phase 1. We're hoping that they will follow us into phase 2. And so we're calling out for point repair of the existing brick. But that's mainly to tie in that front facade to the side elevations. And then if we need to brace that parapet, we would like to do that on the top. I don't think that's visible. That's just what that note is. And I think that is. And although we can certainly jump back in pictures if there's anything you'll want to see in particular.
Any questions for the applicant? It was only 8 minutes.
Try.
The original cast iron corbel, the plan is to replace that with a fiberglass corbel.
The one that's at the top of the building.
Top of the building. And then the fiberglass reinforced concrete. Where were you going to use that?
So where this,
my computer was not letting me scroll through.
oh, that's okay. Yeah, where those wooden pieces can't be preserved, we think we can preserve some of those just with epoxy. We would replace those with it. But anything that is, except for that top piece, anything that is cast iron to come off the building would go back on. Anything that's wood that is in good shape would go back on, but if it's in bad shape, it would be replaced with, we're proposing GFRC. And that's particularly below the sills, so we're limited to that.
idea of not replacing it in kind is
Well,
durability or
that's
maintenance?
Durability, and we actually think we can get a better cast, with, that's a pretty detailed wood carving that will take a very skilled craftsman. And I know that's doable, and you can 3D print it and all those things. That's open to all that.
Any other questions? Thank you. Do we begin?
Laurel Fay with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The PSC is pleased to see this restoration project for this Category 2 building come before the board. Overall, we are very supportive of this proposal, but we would encourage the applicant to use authentic and kind replacement materials for the window detail and corbel at the cornice, rather than a GFRC substitute material due to the historical significance of the structure. If, however, a GFRC substitute material is entertained by the board, it should be limited to the uppermost parts of the building per BAR principles. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else speaking? Okay, Frank, give us the staff comments and recommendations.
Staff just had 2 observations. One, that since this is a Category 2 building, material changes cannot be approved by staff. And the changes are, the proposed changes are for the emergency repairs.
Mr. Young, did you want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the public comment and city staff comments?
I'll make just one reply. This is, we generally agree with the policy that things higher up on the building maybe have a little bit more flexibility, and just this is preservation brief 16, which states that the importance of matching the original material may be less important to the effect of replacing the missing feature may have on the overall historic character and appearance of the building. It goes on to say the authenticity of the material may be secondary to the overall visual quality. So we think that the higher up, it makes sense to have that sort of substitution. Thanks.
All right, public comment and the applicant presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and vote.
I know there's precedent around Charleston for replacing replacement of material that's high up on the building. Several, I can think of several buildings where cornices were put back on and synthetic material. But generally, I'm not a fan of doing so unless it's a compelling reason to do it.
And I've really bought all the 99.99% of what's.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty bad, but I have a little bit of anxiety about replacing the big cast iron corbel with a fiberglass one. I mean, I just I think the concept of replacing particularly critical, and those are pretty big cast iron corbel. Replacing them in kind is an appropriate approach, and they're cast iron and masonry over a long period of time. You know, that pretty much stainless steel and masonry over a long period of time are not going to be the greatest made, but there are ways to overcome that. You can isolate it. So I'm a little concerned about that. I would, unless they're way up on the building, I agree that the ornamentation would be better in kind, not in GFRC.
The cases that come back to me are cases of a weight issue, you know, things such as that. But there's no compelling reason. I would rather go back with authentic material.
That's absolutely my issue. I think everything, obviously, everything's being done. It's like it's careful and considerate.
Anyone have a question for the applicant?
Yes.
Clarification?
Clarification, please.
Well, just on the weight, I tend to agree, that the weight of that cast iron at the top of the building is not good. The structural hasn't weighed in on that.
If that's overly problematic, I mean, the way that they'll take the other three off to make them a fiberglass.
I agree, actually, but I think so, we should do that.
No, if that is, if structurally, that is a really serious concern, then the other three should be addressed in some way. I'm not exactly saying, proposing that they be taken off and replaced in fiberglass, but if that is a really legitimate concern, that should be investigated to see if there's issues with attachment, they should be somehow corrected.
Well, if it is, they could go back to the board. If it is, they could go to the board and ask for that and have the support.
I do have one more, I have one question for that. I guess a little bit more description on the mattress plates. Just kind of your vision for what those are gonna look like, and then it looks like on the first floor, the ones on the outermost are smaller and look a little squeezed in there. I don't know if you guys are still kind of thinking through those. Or
Yeah, I tried to make them the same diameter, but they're pulled in a bit from the exterior walls. The idea is they'd be the same diameter. I have them drawn, I think, at 9 inches. Yeah, and the design of that.
Anyone want to make a motion? Bill?
How do you guys feel about the materials? Material substitutions.
I mean, I would rather not see them.
Yeah.
I would approve everything but the replacement of the decorative wood and cast iron elements with synthetic material. Synthetic materials.
And if their structural engineer say that it
Well,
is
I
a weight
think
problem,
they need
would
to
they
come back
come
to the
back
structural
here?
engineer's report.
Yeah, okay. All right, I'll make a motion then for approval as submitted, with the exception of there's to be no synthetic materials substitutions on the building.
Give a motion on the floor for approval as submitted, except that there's to be no synthetic material substitutions on the building. Do I have a second to Bill's motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, Fillmore. Motion to vote. Carol?
Yeah, in favor.
Becky?
Yeah, in favor.
Bill?
Yeah, in favor.
Fillmore?
Yeah.
Chair votes the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Could I ask a clarification? Do you want them to come back to the board for a review or we staff review? A complete,
I mean, not necessarily.
Oh,
like,
do we need to
mattress
do,
plates, design?
do we need to put a revised motion on the floor for preliminary and final review by staff? This was just a conceptual, right? Correct. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So,
Preliminary and
okay,
final
so
review
we're
by
gonna
staff.
modified motion on the floor. Okay, so they don't have to come back. All in favor of the revised motion, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, none opposed, that motion, the revised motion is passed unanimously. There you go.
Thank you.
Okay, agenda item 10 is 80 Smith Street. Frankie, give us an introduction, overview of the project, please.
Smith Street is in Charleston Village,
Yeah,
number 10.
absolutely.
Oh, you're out. 10 and 11.
80 Smith Street is in Charleston Village, Council Bill 8. It is not rated circa 1890 in the old structure. Requesting conceptual approval for rear addition. This property location on Smith Street. And I will turn it over to the applicant.
Hi there, I'm Eric Selms with Cozy Development, Cozy Studios. Go through some of the historic stuff. We're not really proposing substantial changes or to the existing building, except at the very rear of it. So the historic context of the building itself, built sometime between 1872 and 1882, where you see it showing up on the map here, but not on the 72 image there. Then a series of historic photos just sort of reiterating its presence over time, and that it wasn't really changed that much as far as you can understand the outline of the building generally remaining the same as it moves forward through these slides here. We have the 1975 BR approval for modification restoration of the porch. It was done back in the 70s, and then you see it here in 2014. The west elevation is the street elevation. So you have two different views of the west elevation. Our south elevation, it's so hard to actually get to the south elevation, but it's that our photo is oblique here, because we can't really get far enough away from it. And you stop in the back in the east, where again the south elevation would be oblique. This is the existing end of the building, this facade piece here. And then recently the interior of the building was renovated and the landscape was renovated to include a pool, things of that nature. So what we're talking about doing is adding on, extending this piece out to create a, well, and then you have the street views, which aren't really gonna, if you go back to this south elevation photo, and we do have a view later on in the deck where basically you can kind of see the end of where the addition would be from a couple feet to the side here. So the streetscape we're not really modifying the streetscape portion of the existing house. Zoning map, FEMA flood map, we're not lifting the building. It is in place. Here's the existing site plan that should approve the pool in a more provisional sense. Here is the existing site plan with the pool as it was constructed. You have the end of the existing building, either the little patio up front, and then this is pool equipment and HVAC equipment in an enclosure there. The addition then adds on to the back. So the intention of the addition is a small living space. The owner's mother's wheelchair bound. So we want to build this unit flush with the existing floor so that she can get in and through the house, in and out of the house into this unit, but have some independence with her and her husband to at least be able to hang out there and have a cup of coffee and so forth. I will note that there is an error in here on the plan. This is a doorway here. So the existing building terminates right here. The addition is proposed to add on here, and that's a doorway here. So this would be a corridor from the existing building through to the addition, which doesn't show up here. That is in part because we want the mother to be able to go in and out of the house without having to leave the building, but it's also part of the zoning requirements that it be attached in order to keep the floors flush related to the FEMA floodplain. Sorry, going back, it's a very simple addition. It's a wheelchair accessible bathroom with a little bit of extra space for turning room and grab bars and so forth, foldable grab bars, a bed with clearances next to it. This is a storage space accessible from the outside, and then a small kitchenette that's really just sort of like a coffee station. It's not actually a kitchen in any sense. On the roof plan, second story in roof plans, the second story really is the second story of the house. Just that we're not really connecting above the second story. We are showing an HVAC enclosure on the roof. So we're relocating the HVAC from the landscape up onto the roof and enclosing that. And then here with the roof plan itself, you see the same thing. On the east elevation of the existing, you see this sort of series of roof lines and so forth. We're not modifying that, but it is a little bit, there's a lot going on. We are on the addition, we propose to to somewhat mimic the way that this piece is added on. There's an awning that we are removing here and putting on a similar awning a little bit bigger so that the occupant can go and sit outside the patio. This is the front of the building. You can't, the street side of the building on the west elevation, you can't see any real amplification there. Oh, press the wrong button. So the end of this existing building has a little bit of like a facade piece that sticks up, you know, to create a flat front related to this roof slope. And we are proposing to mimic that condition a little bit lower. I believe it's 6 inches lower. So we're just sort of keeping that in kind. And here you see the HVAC well that's there. Very simple, 3 simple windows. We're actually, this is reusing the existing door that is on this elevation here. We're relocating that existing door, glass door. One thing I want to comment on the plan that I forgot to mention. It's a very narrow piece and we are matching the existing line here and the existing line here because it is so tight. It's a little hard to meaningfully get any kind of setback on the sides and still have clearances, wheel-type clearances and so forth. So the elevation pieces that I did talk about. This is the north elevation, which for the most part, this house is mostly blank. There is a window here, which is somewhat unusual in the existing building. Here you see that little parapet condition there that we are mimicking and lower here. Here's the edge of the HVAC well, parapet around the HVAC equipment there. And this is, I mentioned earlier on that photograph that's from the street. If you look down for the 3D view, and I'm not actually sure where the building, the existing building and so forth comes, you would be able to see the edge of that down through that alleyway, but you know, only just. And that is where we are at.
Any questions for the applicant? You have anyone?
Utility Historic Charleston Foundation, HCF holds an easement on 87th Street. The proposed addition is in compliance with the terms of our easement and has received our approval.
Is there anyone else speaking? Okay, Frank, if you give us any staff comments and recommendations, please.
Staff has some observations that changes penetration in the existing addition creates a nice rhythm, and the proposed addition will be minimally visible. Staff recommendation is a conceptual approval with preliminary and final review by staff.
Frankie, do the applicant want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the public comment or the staff comment? All right, public comment and the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
Yeah, I understand the reason for, my first reaction was to introduce some sort of a hyphen, but yeah, we're only dealing with 12 feet width there, so that'd be difficult to do. But I do wonder if there may be some other minor ways that where this edition could be differentiated from the prior editions. Maybe a siding profile change might be one way. I already see a window differentiation, which is good. On the south elevation, it's between the double doors and then the other end that's got the 3 windows. There's a vertical board introduced there. I'm not sure that that's needed because I think that almost makes it read like an old corner board, and you got two additional additions. So I think that could come out. And then on the north elevation, I noticed it looks like you may be lacking a corner board to sort of differentiate between the old and the new. And maybe you don't introduce the parapet on the very back end. I'm not sure. How did you guys feel about that?
Yeah. I would agree with you.
Doesn't bother me. Yeah, but I agree with everything you said.
Anything else? Bill, you wanna make a
Is there anything else?
Yeah, I think Bill is thorough.
Yeah, I'll make a motion for conceptual approval. Preliminary and final review by staff with conditions that the vertical member, that would be east of the double doors be eliminated.
Which elevation is that?
I'm sorry, on the south elevation.
Hold on. All right.
A corner board be introduced separating the new addition from old on the north elevation. And the siding profile on the addition should differ in exposure from the rest of the from the adjacent body of the building.
I've got a conceptual approval with preliminary and final review by staff with 3 core conditions. 1, the vertical member east of the double doors on the south elevation be eliminated. 2, the corner board be introduced. The corner board be introduced right on the north elevation, separating the new from the old. And 3, the siding profile on the addition should be differentiated. Okay. Do I have a second to Bill's motion?
Second.
Becky, I'll put the motion to a vote. Daryl?
Yeah, in favor.
Bill?
Yeah, in favor.
Becky?
Yeah, in favor.
Chair votes to the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, agenda item 11, 105 King Street. Frankie, please introduction, overview the project, please.
105 King Street, it's in Charleston, District 8, it's not rated circa 1945 in the Golden Historic District. I recommend conceptual approval for a second story addition and fenestration change. Property location on King Street. We're gonna turn it over to the end. You did even request a break right before your items.
Nice, thank you so much. Joel Adrian, Coastal Creek here to present 105. This is your second look at this property. It is 2 addresses. The 105 is the front house that you see right there, and then the 1-story hyphen piece, the 105.5 is the building in the back. Comments that we received, let's see if we go through the history, looked at it already once. Those buildings were built, I believe it was in the 50s. They're concrete block stucco structures. It's on that timeline there for you. There hasn't been any relevant change other than that hyphen was put in, I believe, since then. So what we're looking to do is to remove the roof off of the hyphen and add a second story to it to make that front address 105 more livable for the current owner. And the concerns, let's get to the elevations. The floor plans did not change other than ceiling heights based off of comments that were received, windows, sizes, and all that. So everything you're looking at here should be relatively the same from proposed previous to current proposed on that second floor plan. Get to roof plan, there's obviously a significant change to this. The middle, far left is what's current, middle is what was proposed last meeting. And that roof was over framing on top of both structures. Bill was very clear that the eave and freeze board needed to remain. And the freeze board part really made the whole redesign extremely challenging because the whole structure is very low. And so here are some sections to kind of explain where we're at, what we're trying to do. The previous, you can see that in the middle here, we were just looking at, trying to set an 8-foot plate, have a simple little shed roof on it, low slope roof. now what we're doing in order to preserve that eave and that frieze board is that there is going to be a small section, approximately 3 feet of width coming off of that existing front house that will have a 6 foot or 6 foot 8 inch ceiling to it initially, and then it'll be able to open up once we get past that, so we can preserve the structure of that original house. And so this is existing what's there. And next page shows on the top is what was originally proposed. Daryl was very concerned about the proportion and scale of the windows in that addition. So we have brought those down, and then the idea, again, looking at this elevation, is to offer that structure in that small little space where it's low, it can get below, and then it just steps up slightly in order to get a ceiling of roughly a little over 8 feet in the main part of this addition. And then there was concern about materials because we were changing materials, trying to differentiate. And we were asked to study whether that hyphen goes completely siding or stays stucco or completely stucco. We have chosen to go complete stucco on that hyphen. The main reason for that would be this elevation, and that that this wall is just it's flat. It's all one plane, just runs. And so if we were to try to take this and make this hyphen piece with lap siding, and we're putting furring strips on, and then we're putting sheathing, then we're putting the lap siding, and all of a sudden we've got something that's proud of the other two, and it just didn't make sense. Whereas taking the roof off, we've got a nice transition spot when we put that floor system in, that we can put a nice control joint and then start going again for the proposed addition piece. On this elevation, you're just seeing the very high part would be the parapet on the courtyard side, and then just a low pitch slope roof that runs to the side. In here, existing. These, I think that get to the next one because that's showing the back building. Back here. Yeah. Oh, it's this one here, sorry. This proposed elevation. So parapet wall, low slope roof. This dash part here is the roof that comes right off of the front building, just to show that it is lower. And I think that we've got aerial images. And we did provide, I think, some. No, that was it. Sorry. There.
Any questions for the applicant?
How visible is this, Joe? From
Well, it is. So this is a little misleading because it shows like see you're walking down King Street, you're going to get a shot of this in here. You will see it. I'm not going to say you can't see it.
It's the north side that's pretty visible through the parking lot next door.
Okay.
Yeah, this lower image I think maybe shows a little better that there is some landscaping that buffers, but I know that the intent is that landscaping could come and go. So it's, what do you see if it's not there?
Any other questions?
Now, if you could leave it on that screen, that sheet, that'd be great.
Do we have anyone speaking? Frankie, if you give us these staff comments and recommendations, please.
Staff had an observation that the parapet seemed to create awkward conditions at the eaves. Staff would prefer the entire roof to be below the eave. Staff recommendation is deferral for restudy per the previous board meeting. Board motion, as we did not feel it met that motion.
Okay. Joel, did you want to respond to or clarify anything?
Sure, I'll go back and I think, Frankie, if I'm hearing you right, that you want all of this to run just below that eave. Just don't know.
You're mostly concerned about the other side.
I think it was clear.
This elevation here.
It's like here, yeah. There would be
This, oh, that awkwardness there in the change. Um, Yeah, I think that if that eave has to run continuously across. And again, the high part of this is at 6 feet 8 inches inside, the low part is 6'4". And trying to carry that straight across, there's still gonna be a break in it, because at some point I've got to jump that roof up. So I think that, we looked and we studied, should we take this center part and put a different roof form on it, do another gable roof, and take this roof pit and try to put it here, and it made this, again, feel, they're always concerned about subordination of the size of it, and we felt that if we put that roof on, it just continued to increase the height and the mass of that centerpiece.
All right, public comment, the applicant's presentation is now closed, so move into board discussion and a vote.
It's a tough one. I struggle with it. I think you'll get, like Joel's showing, I think you can get below the front eave, but you can't get, I don't think you'll ever get below the back eave. I don't, I struggle with a little bit architecturally where the roof kind of is showing a hyphen, but none of the rest of the building is. So that's, and then I don't love that horizontal control joint on the back, on the north.
He needs it though.
What?
I guess he would need it in real life.
I can't say all these.
Expansion.
I don't know if he's gonna keep. Look, Joel, is the north side CMU or that's frame?
It's all, it is all block with stucco on it, the exterior walls.
Okay.
Oh, the addition's all block?
Yeah, the hyphen, the existing,
Yeah.
the front house, the
Maybe they
hyphen,
don't
and the
make
back house is all block right now.
So I don't know. The roof's, it's kind of awkward.
Yeah, I mean, the roof is the issue. The winter proportions on the south side, they look so much better now. I like that you're using a consistent material, first floor, second floor for the center element. But it's just what to do with that roof. And I just don't have an answer.
I don't either. For a small project, it's extremely hard because you have two masses that don't relate to each other.
Yes.
And you have a connection piece that's not a hyphen, but it has to be the same material because the first floor is already that material. So me as an architect, I'm struggling to tell him, to give him direction. But when I saw the parapet, I didn't think that worked either. So
I don't think so either.
you got one of those just hard projects.
I mean, do you go ahead and just put a cross gable on it?
That's what I was wondering.
To bringing it to the same level as the front mass. And then it just.
And let it die in.
Maybe it's not, maybe it doesn't tie into that mass, or I don't know. Or
it's a lower slope.
Or it's lower slope or something.
I think it's something like that that's needed. I don't think it's a big move. But I think all three of us are struggling with the parapet, right?
Yeah.
Are
Makes
you
me think
saying
of that
that you
one
would
on the
allow it
King
to
Street
align? You allow
that
the
we
E
got.
to align?
Yeah.
Makes me think of that building. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't think I do.
Fabulous on Bright Hall.
Yeah.
Do you remember that roof line?
Yes.
That's what it's looking like.
It's just better.
I think so too.
I agree with Bill, but a cross gable, and we probably would allow the eave to be the same as the eave on the front, so you could tie in cleanly.
We normally wouldn't, but in this case, I
this
think that's
case,
what
I
it
think
has
you
to
have
be.
Otherwise, I think it's really, really awkward looking.
The roof pitch, so I can still tie into that back.
It just die right into it. So
Be
you'll be,
simple and come in under the, at least under the roofs at the back, but then the whole thing is just.
so we want to, you want me to make a motion?
Yeah, I
Wanna
think
rush
it'd
it?
be for deferral, but. Yes, whatever y'all think.
I'm fine with so if we make a deferral, then we don't need to make a motion, right? Or you know what to do though.
I think typically we would give comments, but I think deferral. Yeah, with board comments. So there is a motion on the floor for deferral for restudy per board comments. Do you have a second to Daryl's motion?
Yeah, I'll second.
Thank you, Bill. I'll put the motion to a vote. Becky,
Yay in favor.
Daryl,
Yeah, in favor.
Bill,
Yeah, in favor.
chair votes the majority and the motion passes. Completely. I think both.
Thank you all. Have a great evening.
All right, agenda item 12 is 19 Ashley Avenue. Frank, can you give us please introduction, please?
It's impossible.
Huh?
Good. It's impossible to make that look good.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, not with coming into the view. Unless it just looks like a good frame rate. Yeah.
Okay. 19 Ashley Avenue is in Charlestown, Council District 8. It is not surveyed. Certified 1975, the old historic district. Requesting conceptual approval for fenestration. This is the property's location on Ashley. I will turn it over to the applicant.
Hi, my name's Ashley Severance. Scott Parker, my contractor, was here previously and he presented October 23rd. He couldn't be here, so I'm presenting as owner. The bar had previously reviewed it on October 23rd and there's some changes, so we removed some things. We removed what were overhead and we changed the roof to hand crimp metal. And the shutter style we kept. Oh, I get the, sorry, I haven't done this before, so you have to bear. How do you click it?
Point at Travis.
Okay. So here's the survey. There's concrete right here currently. But we had pavers approved. Those pavers are being installed. They should be finished this week. This is the exterior, front, side, and rear. The interior's already been completely renovated. The exterior is leaving a little bit to be desired. The wind is currently leak, the front door leaks and the roof leaks, so we're trying to protect the inside as well as make it a little bit more impressionably appealing. This is the view from the horse lot and where here. This is 19 Ashley. Okay, so here is the existing front elevation, although the current roof is a single roof. We're getting ready to put on in current metal roof. And then what we're proposing is a new style double glass door.
Is it a steel door? What type of glass door?
It's a wood door, it's not steel.
Okay.
It matches the same material as the double hung windows. They're Marvin. Should be in the package.
Okay. Nice.
And you can keep going if you
I
have
can
more.
keep- okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. You may have to coach me along.
Oh, you're totally fine.
So there is a window that we were going to remove, and that's this top one here. It's kind of in an awkward position. And then we're going to be adding someone. Is this window down below we're removing? We're putting two windows in its place. We're removing the old window, putting two in its place, and then there'd be a window addition here. This one would be removed. Keep going. In the back, so this is the back of the house. These are where the two windows would be added. So this is existing, and this is what we're proposing. So it's just kind of giving a little bit more life. And This is the picture of it currently. That's actually the front of the house. Any questions on the windows before moving to the gutters? So with the new hand crimp metal roof, we would add 6-inch half round gutters with hidden hangers and be looking to match the roof. Because we are doing the windows, we will have to re-stucco the entire townhome. And so these were the colors that were selected. And here you see the roof overhang, but we took that out of the submittal. That's it. Here's the information on the door, which may be in the packet.
Any questions for the applicant?
The existing windows are they IG? Insulated glass.
Insulated, they are, I don't know. I don't want to answer.
The new ones would be IG, though, correct? It would be insulated glass.
They're Marvin.
They would.
Yeah, they're Marvin, yeah.
I would say 50% of the current windows leak, and probably more of them don't work.
You had mentioned that the building will be restuccoed because of the windows, or
Well,
in our building, or just around the windows?
no, the entire,
Okay.
Because I just have to look right.
Okay.
Just like a lower threshold of acceptability for it to be like patchwork. So we're just gonna do the whole thing, but because we're adding some windows and then patching up, we just thought it would be better to restucco the entire.
Okay, so when you restucco, you're going over the existing stucco and not removing it. So when you get to the windows and you return that stucco into the windows, are you compensating on window size to, because you're gonna have a new layer of stucco that's gonna cover your window trim unless you compensate for that. So that's something that needs to be
To
kept
think
in
about.
mind.
Ideally, we would stucco to the trim.
Right, the exposure will change.
Yeah, the exposure would change.
But I don't really care either way. If it's important to the board to have it stuccoed over the trim so that it's, I don't know how the contractor would do that, but if it's all one material, I'm fine with that as well.
I'm just saying that, when you add a layer of stucco on the inside of those edges, your one part of your window trim is going to get covered over unless you compensate by installing narrow. So
Yeah, I'm not really sure how to answer that, but we'll do it however you want us to do it.
Any other questions?
You have an inspiration photo on your roof. Now that shows ridge caps, but you're gonna hand crimp the ridges, correct?
You're hand crimping.
Okay,
I think in the first presentation we weren't, so these might be like the old inspiration pictures. We
Okay.
didn't need to have them redone,
Gotcha. Okay.
but the direction you all gave us last time is hand crimp, and that's actually already been approved.
Okay.
And
That one you're looking at, they're not doing that, the front door overhang, it's an inspiration.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think there's a note on the roofs that says, aluminum drip edge ridge to be hand crimped.
Okay.
There's a note.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. Anyone speaking? Okay, Frankie, if you'll give us the staff comments and recommendations, please.
That just had one observation that a half glass door with the existing side lights would be more appropriate than the proposed door. And that was the only condition that we had. So we're recommending a conceptual approval with board and staff conditions and preliminary final feedback.
Thank you, Frankie. Ms. Sabrance, did you want to respond to or clarify anything in the staff comments?
sure, just a quick question on the half glass door. Does it matter how far the glass goes down? Is there a requirement? So the bottom part would be
Usually it's pretty low.
pretty low, okay. But do I?
It's just not the entire door to be flat.
They look more like patio doors when they go all the way to the ground, so that's why.
Got it. And do I need to come back and get the door approved, or is it something at staff level?
We've still got to go through our board discussion and a vote. So what we'll do is we'll let you know. You'll know after our discussion whether you need to come back to the board. Public comment and the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
Oh, the only thing that gives me pause is like it's a pair. It's a pair.
It's what?
It's a pair with the neighboring building. I don't, I know this is a foot Simmons, and I know it's only 19, so like typically I would be like, it's a struggle with that, but.
I get what you're saying.
Bill, how would the board typically look at that when you were on it?
I don't know. I mean, I think you could argue two different ways,
Yeah.
for consistency, or you could kind of take the approach that, we have lots of sister houses in Charleston, and they're sisters, they're not identical twins.
Otherwise, my only comment was on the front door also.
Yeah, that's really my only comment. Clarifying the ridges of the roof and then the front door, I think,
Front door should be a little bit more formal.
Yeah.
It shouldn't look like a patio door.
right. But I think all the other changes I'm fine with.
Do we have this is on a motion?
I'll make a motion for conceptual approval with preliminary and final review by staff, with the condition that the entrance door, if it is to have lights in it, that they only be the top half of the door. I don't know how you put that in motion, but. Or if you
Do
just
you want the
put-
staff condition? Does that match what you're trying, the staff condition?
Yeah, well, let's see, let me read it again. Yeah. Staff condition.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion on the floor for conceptual approval with staff condition and preliminary and final review by staff. Do I have a second to Bill's motion?
I'll second.
Carol, you want to vote? Belmore,
Yeah, in favor.
Becky,
Yeah, in favor.
Bill,
You in favor?
Daryl,
In favor.
chair votes the majority and the motion passes unanimously. So what that means, you don't have to come back to the board. The sort of replacement door that you would choose. You can go to staff level and have it put there.
So everything just gets updated in your permit.
Yeah.
And thank you.
Okay, agenda item 13, 17 Wentworth Street. Frankie, if you'll give us an introduction or overview of the project, please.
Seventeen Wentworth Street is in Borough, Council District 8, Category 2, circa 1840 in the Golden Historic District. West conceptual approval for fenestration changes, new exterior stairs, hardscape changes, and roof deck screening.
Good evening, I'm Julie O'Connor. I am the designer on this project at 17 Wentworth. So we have some hardscaping changes that I've sort of outlined here. There is a brick driveway currently. Some of it is in, some sketchy conditions, so we're gonna, repair it and replace in kind as needed. There is a gate right on the street, and my client was hoping to move that back to make it easier for parking. Then we're going to do some bluestone paving in the back and a pool in the back of the property. So that's sort of the site, and here's photos and everything that you guys can look at and I'm gonna try and zip through this, but I'll go back to whatever questions that you have. Since you've been here for so long. Front elevation, no changes. This is the as-built of the west elevation, and I sort of highlighted the areas that we're working, and then sort of matched that with the proposed. So there's kind of a rather unfortunate addition that was done at some point in the back part of this piazza, but hey, it's there and we're going to keep it. But we would like to update the doors and make them taller and a bit more appropriate from a scale perspective. So right now they're just these wood 4-panel doors, and so we're hoping to do a really beautiful glass door with the transom to sort of start aligning with all of the other fenestration. There's a weekend built set of stairs coming off the back of that piazza, so we just want to rebuild those with a wood stair, but nicer detailing. There's a roof deck that you'll see in some of the photos up there at the top. It's got like a little 18-inch wall, so we just thought it'd be good to add a little railing up there for safety. And then the other change is in this back house section. You can see in the as-built, there's transoms there that we're keeping, and then just, I don't know, somebody just said, let me go to the junkyard and find some doors and put them on here. So we'd like to do some nicer doors back there. That's, I don't think, visible at all. On the south elevation, again, just that stair from the rear of the piazza. And then up top, there's a window system up there that's really failing because obviously the exposure, there's no cover over it. So we're hoping to replace that. It would look the same, but new. And then we were also hoping to add sort of a screen around these HVAC units that are there that we're keeping, but are just sort of out there exposed. And then on the east elevation, same thing, we wanted to add the railing up at the top. And then this very back section right here, well, this middle section right here was added sometime in the 40s, I believe. And so what we were thinking about doing would be to take that window and move it forward. This window that we'd like to add on this elevation is 43 feet back from the front of the building. And the building's 69 feet long, so it's very, 2/3 of the way back. So that's it.
Any questions for the applicant?
The railing that's going to go on top of the knee wall up at the deck, have you thought about what that construction's gonna be?
Yeah, we wanted to do a metal railing up there, so it's light.
Be a fabricated steel.
Yeah.
On the kitchen house portion, the two, the new doors, are those shutters I'm seeing on the side of the door with the vertical lines, or?
Yes.
Okay. Would they be like a bifold to go all the way across?
Yeah, they are. They're existing.
Oh, they're existing.
Mhm.
Ah, I got you. You're talking to take them
Oh,
off.
they are. I could take them off.
Yeah, they were
You
kind of-
can't see those.
they were-
I'm happy to take them off. Hodgepodging going on back there.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Yes, they are.
Frankie, do you have, can you give us these staff comments and recommendations?
We just have observations. Those changes are minimal and improvement to the architectural direction of the structure. Recommending a conceptual approval with preliminary and final review by staff.
Thank you, Frankie. Julie, did you want to respond to or clarify?
I agree completely. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, public comment. The applicant presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and vote.
They're overall positive changes.
Needs ups.
Daryl, do you want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve it as submitted.
We have a motion on the floor with preliminary and final review by staff.
Yep.
Conceptual approval with preliminary review by staff. Do I have a second to Daryl's motion?
A second.
Thank you, Bill. The motion to the vote. Becky?
Yeah, in favor.
Fillmore?
Yes.
Daryl?
Yeah, in favor.
Bill?
Yeah, in favor.
Chair votes the majority.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Okay, agenda item 14, been withdrawn by staff. We're on agenda item 15. 149 South Battery. Frankie, if you'll give us an introduction overview of the project, please.
1 second. I just type that fast. I can't hear.
Right.
Yes, I want to go home, Frankie.
Make my arthritis go away and I'll type faster. 149 South Battery is in Charlestown, Council District 8. It is not surveyed, circuit 1938 in the Old Historic District. They were requesting conceptual approval for fenestration changes to the rear facade. So property's location and.
Thank you. Lauren Sanchez Design, representing our clients. Julia Boothman and Ken Hirsch over there. I apologize, I have to do a handout, which we've been given permission by the staff to do. We submitted in November, and we're deferred to this meeting only to open our drawings this week to realize the last 2 pages had not attached. So what you reviewed was not totally irrelevant, but it was missing information, and our apologies. Everybody can just follow along. Here, thank you so much for your patience with that. Don't write to you.
Old school.
I know, and they're half size, so you also can put your spectacles on, forgive me. I figured full size would be just part. Good, so this Ken and Julia purchased this building a few months ago and are just so thrilled to be in an historic building in the heart of Charleston. This is a 1938 structure, which had 1 architectural modification done that same year, so both 1938. We're on the sort of the far end, closest to the end of the battery of South Battery. You can sort of see our position here. And then the Sanborn map from 1929 showing us that it was not there, and from 1944 it was there. And there's this current sort of Google map presence, the outline of when the building was built and when modifications were made that very same year. These are our context images, which on the printout have more instructions. This is actually our red line set that we submitted to you all. So forgive me, the red lines are included in the printout there. These are just our context images of our 149 South Battery and its neighboring buildings. This is actually the building itself. We've got the front elevation of the building and then the rear southwest rear elevation where we propose to create a new fenestration and then the sort of side views on either side of the home. The client invited us to help expand the kitchen of the home. It's a nearly 4,000 square foot house, which has a very tiny kitchen. And they wanted to expand that. And in doing so, standing out the back of the house, I'm actually going to jump to understand we proposed the new opening here between these 2 windows. We're not really sure why there are so many different shapes of windows on the back of the building, but there actually used to be trees in front of these that the client removed because they actually have a fantastic, wonderful backyard and view. They have these 2 meandering oaks in the backyard. The backyard is just a magical wonderland, and the only way to get there is through the mudroom and a little teeny set of stairs. So there's no connection to the backyard. And in doing the kitchen renovation planning, looking at the backyard and thought, gosh, wouldn't it be amazing to have some sort of connection to this beautiful place that you can't get to quite easily. They also have a view of the water, which you cannot see from the ground level, but you certainly can see from the kitchen level. And so thus making it visible from the public way. We're visible right here between these 2 houses on Murray Boulevard and sort of a zoom in of where you can see the house. This is the far side of the fenestration, and it would go sort of part of it is not in view. This is the existing plan on the left and then a proposed plan on the right. We're proposing the kitchen expansion, the introduction of a large glass window and door, and then a deck that terraces down to the beautiful backyard, just for a graceful connection to the yard. The front elevation has no changes, no visible work. We didn't duplicate that elevation. It's just right there. The existing northwest side elevation has no visible changes. The rear southwest rear elevation certainly does.
And the top image, of course, shows what we propose. The printout that you have is more complete. These last two drawings, or these last couple of drawings are the ones that are really sort of lacking information. So what you have there is far more useful. So what we would propose is to create this larger opening from the kitchen to the backyard and a direct connection to their beautiful backyard and the meandering oaks. The window is currently proposed as a completely different material from the rest of the house in order to honor the, to be distinctly different, to show it's not pretending to be from 1938, but it is also trying to, be sub to the architecture. And the steps would be brick leading down to the yard, mimicking the front steps of the home, which are also brick on masonry. And then let's see, the part where we realized we'd definitely sent you our red line set is the very next drawing, which you're gonna have to look at your printout for, because we do have a side view elevation. So excuse me, that's gonna be the 204. That's the one you're gonna have to really look at there, my apologies. That's gonna be the side view of the steps, which show the railing. The railing would propose to be an iron rail with finials, an exact replication of the iron rails on the front of the house. So carrying that language along, and then of course the brick steps and terrace, allowing them to have a direct connection with the backyard, capture a view of the water, which is pretty spectacular from up there, and currently not really able to be appreciated. So that's that guy. And then, oh, sorry, that's where this is where we realized we really has good. The next drawing is just not even flat out in here. It's the one that was missing. That is the enlarged plan that just shows the dimensions of the terrace and steps down to the backyard, and, the opening of the fenestration and how it relates to the kitchen. They've become quite good friends with all of their neighbors and were able to gather signatures from all directly adjacent neighbors, all of whom were very excited for the possibility. The back of the house, no offense to the original design team there, but the back of the house is lacking. The front of the house is just simply lovely, and then the back of the house is it seems like a forgotten element. And so I think that the hope was that, well, in addition to creating a fenestration that makes them allowed to use their backyard, it also creates more of a balance and sort of purpose to the back of the house, where the openings are currently a bit meandering. Yeah, that's.
Any questions for the applicant?
One on 203. Notes, I read note 7 and smiled, but then I didn't find it on the drawings because when I read it, I was thinking, oh, that back degree system doors and windows are going to be steel. I saw a French Steel Company window and door system, and then I noticed the note is not on it, and the other note is it's aluminum.
It's steel. It's a steel window.
Oh,
It is not an aluminum window.
Where's the aluminum?
Where's the aluminum? now?
3.
No,
Well, that is.
Mullions to be black aluminum.
door frame and mullions to be black aluminum.
Oh, geez. Well, that is not the case. Forgive me.
So note 7 is the correct.
Absolutely. We would not put aluminum on a historic home. I'm not even sure where that would come from.
I read that note 7. I
Well,
said, oh.
gee, you're just gonna have to ignore that one. My
Why not
apologies.
steel?
Another red line that wasn't caught, I'll tell you that. No. This is a French Steel Company window, proposing a steel and in juxtaposition to the 1938 brick.
Good question. Any other questions? Thank you. Is there anyone speaking for the public? Okay. Right.
Just have observation that the proposed changes are minimally visible and are appropriate for the structure. We're recommending a conceptual approval with preliminary and final by staff.
Thank you. Ms. Sanchez, did you want to respond to or clarify anything in the staff recommendation? I appreciate it. Okay. All right, public comment and presentation is now closed. We'll move into the board discussion and the vote.
I think if the back of the house had the normal door window alignment, I personally wouldn't be as high on it, but the composition of the windows and doors are kind of out of whack. And I think the new drawing is a much better composition, so I have zero problems with it.
I agree.
Okay. So I'll make a motion.
I would, make, no, that's fine. I agree.
Fillmore's gonna fight you for the motion.
No, I'm not.
You can do it.
Just a board condition that, the back and front door window system will be steel.
Yeah.
Because there's on the drawing,
Right,
it's clearly indicated that it's aluminum and we're approving the drawing. But that's in the motion.
Another deadline to correct, thank you.
So be my guess.
I'll make a motion to approve it as submitted with the condition that the back door is steel.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor for conceptual approval, with the preliminary and final review by staff, with the board condition of the back door be steel. So that's the motion. Becky?
Yay in favor.
Bill?
Yeah, in favor.
Daryl?
You in favor?
In favor.
Chair votes the majority and the motion passes. Wonderful, have a good night.
Thank you.
You too. Okay, we have one more agenda item. Agenda item 16 is, these are just the update VAR policies. The VAR large. Okay, you're presenting.
You're a large role.
So do they accept ours? Oh.
The conditions of alternative energy.
Yeah, that would be on. What are we?
We are looking at.
Oh. Yeah. Oh, okay. I know that.
Would you like me to explain?
This is the same that you.
Yeah.
Nothing's changed.
Nothing has changed of it. This is just a quote of the ordinance that creates the opt-in policy. A sort of explanation of what it was with the more edit about relationship to appropriate structure and immediate surroundings. And this is just stating that when we review in this district, this is in the context of their neighborhood, not the peninsula as a whole. So we're looking at Wagner Terrace and North Central area character appraisals, National Register nomination for Hampton Park Terrace, the inventory for Upper Peninsula, a policy statement for the demolition purview, and then go through basically I took the title of context from the ACAs and listed the features that they look at, and then the character defining features as listed in the ordinance. So that we'd review them as they appear in the context of the neighborhood. So mostly this is to reassure the neighborhood, the board, every council, everyone that we're reviewing these things in their context based on the documentation that we have.
And not based on the South Broad. Which. If there are no comments, I'll make a motion to approve. Do I have a second to my motion?
Second.
I'll put the motion to a vote. Becky?
Yay in favor.
Daryl?
Yeah, in favor.
Bill?
Yeah, in favor.
Fillmore?
Yeah, in favor. Sorry.
Chair votes.
Or I already made your edit, so.
Yeah, everybody's good, Darren.
Okay.
There you go. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Say yay.
Yeah.
Yay.